Chapter 401, White God Doctor. The girl looks very beautiful, although she is not as good as Xiao Zhan next to her. But it is not much worse. The appearance at this time makes people around watching the excitement feel pitiful. I beg you, help my grandfather, call the emergency call. I will definitely thank you later. The girl kept crying to the people watching the excitement, but unfortunately no one could help. It's not that people nowadays are cold-blooded and ruthless, but that they really don't dare to help others. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that the girl and the old man have offended others, and that the offending is not ordinary people. They are just ordinary people, and there is a family of young and old to raise. Who dares to intervene in these things? Oh, girl, your grandfather is so badly injured, it's too late to call an ambulance. Some people may feel guilty, and finally can't help but say. But the girl was unwilling to accept the reality and still kept crying. She is too pitiful, and you are too ruthless. Let me call you. Xiao Zhan glared at the passers-by, took out the phone and dialed Yao 20 directly. Some of those people were guilty of lowering their heads and dared not look directly, and some looked at Xiao Zhan sarcastically, and secretly cursed that this was a nosy fool. Long Chen glanced at Xiao Zhan unexpectedly. He didn't expect this girl to be very kind. Are you afraid of retaliation? Perhaps touched by what Xiao Zhan did, an elderly man suddenly walked out of the crowd. Mbairen Shan, the dean of the First People's Hospital of Jiangnan City. It is more than 10 kilometers away from the nearest hospital. It takes half an hour to arrive here at the earliest, and he cannot survive that time in his state. The old man said. Everyone looked at the old man. There was another respect in his eyes that knew him. This is the dean of the First People's Hospital of Jiangnan City. I don't know how many people have been helped in these years. The girl clearly recognized the identity of the old man, and her eyes suddenly showed hope. Mr. Bai, please save my grandfather. As long as you can save my grandfather, the Su family will never forget the kindness. Oh, it's my duty to save the dying and heal the wounded. If I can save me, of course I won't stand idly by. It's just ... I don't have any healing items on me now. Bairen Shan sighed, then looked at the people around him. May I ask who has brought the medical kit, or even the silver needle? Bairen Shan asked. He can also take traditional Chinese medicine. If there is a silver needle, he might be able to continue his life. For the old man. Unfortunately, none of the people around answered, but Bairen Shan could have guessed that who would carry the silver needle with him when he was shopping. When the girl saw this, her eyes were lost, and she sat down paralyzed with a look of lovelessness. Grandpa is the backbone of the family. If something happens to him, the Su family may also encounter a crisis. Hey, even the genius Dr. Bai can't help it. It seems that the old man Su is really helpless. Xiao Zhan sighed and shook his head. She also knows that Bairen Shan, the most reputable doctor in Jiangnan City, has rescued the dead and healed the wounded over the years, and is even more respected as the white genius doctor. If even he can't help it, then it's really no way. At this moment, Long Chen moved suddenly, and he actually walked towards the Su family grandson. What are you doing? Xiao Zhan was shocked when he saw this, and hurriedly stepped forward to hold Long Chen. But someone was a step faster than her. It was the middle-aged bald head. The battle was over, and the killers were all beaten away by the middle-aged bald head. When Bairen Shan passed by, the middle-aged bald head did not stop him, because he had also heard of the name of the genius Dr. Bai. But Long Chen didn't know him. It was an emergency now, and he would never let anyone he didn't know approach the patriarch. Chapter 402, I can save if you don't want to die. Get out of here. Elder Sus life is dying, and the middle-aged bald head is also upset at this time, so he has a very bad attitude towards Long Chen. If you don't want your master to die, just get out of the way. Long Chen's tone was flat. Facing this bald-headed middle-aged man, there was not the slightest fluctuation. Although his current strength may not be as good as the middle-aged bald head, he was a cosmic powerhouse before. How could he be afraid of someone comparable to a first-order evolutionary? What did you say? Hearing Long Chen's words, the bald-headed middle-aged frowned suddenly. What does he mean by this? Could he save the family master? If you waste an extra second now, your father will be more likely to die. Long Chen still said indifferently. The bald-headed middle-aged stared at Long Chen for half a minute. Intuition tells him that the young man in front of him is definitely not easy. But if he really has a way to save the patriarch, he must not miss it. But what if he was also sent by that group? The middle-aged bald head was tangled in his heart, and Long Chen didn't say much, just waited. After another half a minute, the bald-headed middle-aged man finally couldn't hold on, and the patriarch must not die. Okay, I will let you go. But if you dare to hurt the patriarch a little bit, I promise you will die. The bald middle-aged threatened fiercely, but Long Chen didn't take it the same. There are too many people threatening him. To be honest, The bald-headed middle-aged company is not in line. Just when Long Chen was about to go inside, Xiao Zihan ran over and grabbed Long Chen. "You are crazy, what can you do?" "Of course it is to save people," Long Chen said honestly, "because just now, a ball of light fell on Bai Renshan." After Long Chen picked it up, it turned out to be Basic Medical Techniques LV1. Then he spent millions of experience points to directly advance Basic Medical Techniques to the Master of Medical Dao. At this time, his understanding of medical principles had reached the limit. Not to mention the flesh and bones of the living dead, but as long as there is no extinction and the soul is not destroyed, he can save him. As for experience points, he really has no shortage. Although he changed his body, his cultivation level was gone. The soul is damaged and cannot use the power law. But the system's experience points are still there. It seems that he still has tens of billions of experience points. Relatively speaking, 1 million is just the tip of the iceberg. Are you not only thrown into amnesia, but also stupid? How can you save people? Don't join in the excitement, we can't offend those people. Xiao Zihan pressed his throat and said, although the words were not good, but there was still some concern in his tone. Long Chen smiled slightly, touched Xiao Zihan's delicate little face, and said softly, "Don't worry, I know it." Having said that, Long Chen walked to Sus' grandparents. Xiao Zihan stared and touched the face that Long Chen had touched before. This guy became more and more courageous. He even dared to touch his face. Long Chen followed the middle-aged bald head to the side of the grandfather and grandson, feeling the breath of Sus' body, and he was relieved. At this time, although Grandpa Sus' breath was sluggish and in danger, fortunately he was still alive and took a sigh of relief. "Miss, this person says he can save the family master," the middle-aged bald head respectfully said. When she heard that there was help, the girl's dull eyes suddenly cleared. But when he saw that the person who came was just a young man of his own age, his eyes dimmed again. Obviously she also didn't trust Long Chen. Chapter 403, Tap Acupuncture Points to Stop Bleeding. Young man, did you bring the silver needle? Bai Renshan asked. No, Long Chen answered honestly. He also just learned medical skills. Where would he carry silver needles with him? Naughty, dare to say to save people without the silver needle. Bai Renshan was immediately angry. He was very in awe of the medical way. Long Chen's move was obviously an insult to Yadao, who said that silver needles must be saved to save people. Long Chen gave Bai Renshan a white look, and squatted down directly at Old Man Su. Can you really save my grandpa? The girl looked at Long Chen tearfully and asked, do you have any other choices now? You can only trust me and treat a dead horse as a living horse, doctor. Long Chen said. The girl didn't believe him. She looked at the bald middle-aged uncle too. Miss, although this person doesn't speak well, it makes sense. We can only choose to believe him. The middle-aged bald-headed man called uncle to side. Even if he said so, the girl can only send hope to Long Chen. On the contrary, Bai Renshan looked at Long Chen with disdain, and kept humming coldly. Long Chen didn't care about his opinion, standing side by side with his index finger and taking a deep breath. Then, with lightning speed, there was a chaos facing the body of Old Man Su. The speed is so fast, although it has not reached the level of a martial artist, it is by no means comparable to ordinary people. Such a strength is so young, this child. Looking at Long Chen's speed, Uncle Tu couldn't help but stare at him. Not only Uncle Tu, Bai Renshan, who had been coldly humming before, also stopped coldly hum and looked at Long Chen with wide eyes. His eyes were full of shock. This is the technique of acupuncture to stop bleeding. It is indeed possible to replace the silver needle with finger strength. But the thickness of the finger and the silver needle are different. The acupuncture points are very important. Even the silver acupuncture points need to be meticulous. The difficulty of using fingers as acupuncture is extremely high. He can actually. Bear murmured in the mountain pass, this kind of method, he only heard that the ancient medicine sage doctor could do it. And that is just a legend. There is no evidence. Now, this legendary method appeared before his eyes. The blood has stopped. Miss, the blood has really stopped. Uncle Tu's eyes were sharp, and he found that the wounds of Old Man Su had stopped bleeding. Suddenly excited, although Miss Su couldn't see it, she believed in Uncle Tu. Uncle Tu said that the bleeding was stopped, so it must have stopped the bleeding. Well, the blood has stopped, but he can only be kept for an hour at most, and he will be sent to the hospital for treatment within an hour, otherwise he will still die. Long Chen got up and said, then left without looking back. Bai Renshan was still absent, and when he recovered, he realized that the young man had disappeared. He hurriedly looked around for a week, still without Long Chen's figure, and suddenly revealed disappointment. The young man knew how to stop bleeding by tapping acupuncture points. It was not easy for that young man. With Bai Renshan's madness for medical practice, he finally met such a medical genius. How could he easily let it go? Mr. Bai, is my grandpa really all right? Miss Sujia was still a little worried and asked towards Bai Renshan. Don't worry, Miss Su. Patriarch Su has stopped the bleeding and there will be no problems in a short time. As long as you get timely treatment, there is no worry about your life. Someone called the hospital just now, and the ambulance should be there soon. Bai Renshan comforted. After hearing his words, Miss Sujia was relieved. Then he looked in the direction where Long Chen had left. Who is that young man who is as old as himself? It's so mysterious. Chapter 404, I have a bad stomach. The doctor recommends eating more soft rice. Long Yang, what exactly did you just do? They actually let you out. In the car, Xiao Zihan couldn't help asking. Only Long Chen had entered before, and she was blocked outside, so she did not see the scene of Long Chen rescuing old man Su. But seeing that Long Chen came out soon and didn't seem to be hurt, she was relieved. Oh, I took some medicines after I left the nursing center, among them hemostatic medicine. Long Chen said. Since Xiao Zihan didn't see those, he didn't plan to say it. After all, his current identity is Long Yang, a wasteful son-in-law. If he suddenly showed such a powerful medical skill, Xiao Zihan would be more or less suspicious. It will be a lot of trouble to explain at that time. Instead of this, it is better to hide it from the beginning. No wonder, but Long Yang, I warn you, you'd better not intervene casually when you encounter this kind of thing in the future. The Su family is not our offending. If something happens to you, they will not let you go. After listening to Long Chen's words, Xiao Zihan nodded suddenly, and then gave a warning. Long Chen could hear some cares from her words. It seems that although Long Yang is a wasteful son-in-law, Xiao Zihan has always been very disdainful of him, but he will still care when he really encounters things. Hey, wife, are you worrying about me? Long Chen asked with a smile. Worry about you? I'm just afraid that it will affect the Xiao family. As for you, I don't want to care if you are dead or alive. Xiao Zihan said coldly when hearing Long Chen's words. His face instantly returned to the ice-cold state before. Long Chen didn't care too much. He had already seen Xiao Zihan's character, a proper knife-emothed tofu heart. Crunch. Suddenly, the car stopped. Long Chen looked out through the window, and it seemed that this was not residential area, but an antique street. Long Chen in his previous life had also heard of this antique street, which was regarded as the largest antique street in the city. Many people found it inside and became rich overnight. But more is still spending money to buy a big lesson. How could Xiao Zihan come here? She doesn't look like someone short of money. She shouldn't have come to such a place. Could it be that the reason she is so rich is that she found it out on the antique street? Get off, Xiao Zihan said, and got off the car directly. Wife, what are we doing here? Long Chen hurriedly followed out and asked. Buying antiques. This afternoon is Grandpa's birthday banquet. He likes antique calligraphy and painting the most, Xiao Zihan said as he walked towards the antique street. Long Chen let out a cry and followed. Speaking of Long Chen's previous life, although he has heard of this antique street, he has not been here yet. Today is the first time. The antique street is crowded with people, and besides the antique vendors on the street, there are more people who are clinging to the thoughts of picking up. There is not enough heart to swallow the elephant. Everyone is thinking about getting rich, but they don't know it is just a bunch of leeks waiting to be cut. Long Chen shook his head and vomited. Xiao Zihan, who was walking in front of him, heard it, turned his head, and said with some surprise, "Don't you want to get rich?" "Yes, but I won't use this method. I prefer insurance," Long Chen said. "Then why don't you keep looking for a job, knowing that you are staying at home to eat soft meals?" Xiao Zihan asked. Long Chen suddenly didn't know what to say in embarrassment. He didn't know why this brother kept not looking for a job. Maybe he had a bad stomach. The doctor advised him to eat soft food. Chapter 405, a jade pendant full of yin. Xiao Zihan didn't investigate these things. He was obviously used to it. The two stopped and walked. Xiao Zihan picked up the antiques from the street stall from time to time, but quickly shook his head and put it down. Long Chen also looked at these antiques curiously, without any special feeling. "Wife, do you know how to appreciate antiques?" Seeing Xiao Zihan flipping through those antiques, Long Chen couldn't help asking. "I know a little bit. I saw more of these antiques with my grandpa when I was young, and I know a little bit," Xiao Zihan said casually, and then put down a jade pendant in his hand. Long Chen looked at the jade pendant, but suddenly found something was wrong. There was a black air floating around the jade pendant. Long Chen is very familiar with this black energy. It is yin qi. This jade pendant exudes such a strong yin qi, it can be seen that it must have stayed in a place with heavy yin qi all year round. Long Chen guessed that it should come from the ancient tomb. Is this jade pendant an ancient antique? Long Chen thought in his heart, if it comes from an ancient tomb, It is definitely an antique. The older the antique, the more valuable it is. This jade pendant is good, Long Chen suddenly said, holding the jade pendant in his hand again. The yin chi floating in Yu Pei's body instantly poured into Long Chen's body, and Long Chen immediately felt his soul feel refreshed. This yin air gave his damaged soul a little repair. The mental power increased to 20 points, a full double. The small vendor was a little disappointed when he saw Xiao Zihan put down the jade pendant. He didn't expect Long Chen to pick it up again, and he suddenly had hope. Sir, you really have a good eye. This jade pendant is definitely a good thing. You can earn it when you buy it, the small vendor hurriedly said. How much is it? Long Chen asked. Well, today is my first time to open. It's cheaper for you, so I will charge you 50,000. The small vendor said, looking at Long Chen nervously. He must be a novice. Long Chen shook his head. This little vendor was a little greedy. He certainly didn't know the true situation of this jade pendant, but he still sold such a high price. Obviously he wanted to cut Long Chen. Okay, boss, I don't want to waste too much saliva with you. This jade pendant is not very valuable at all. I said it is good and it just looks good. If you charge 50,000, it is a bit too much. Long Chen said. The small vendor suddenly showed embarrassment. Then how appropriate do you think? 10 yuan. If you agree, the deal will be done immediately. Long Chen said. When the small vendor heard the 10 yuan sentence, his eyes suddenly became round. Nima, this guy's bargaining is really scary, and he cut directly from 50,000 to 10 yuan. Even Xiao Zihan, who was on the side, looked at Long Chen with a little surprise. He didn't expect him to bargain so hard. Impossible, $10 can't be paid back. Absolutely not. The small vendor shook his head again and again, but Long Chen could see a clue in his eyes. Smiled coldly. If you can't, then just forget it. 10 yuan is considered cheap for you. You can buy this in the Toyan shop outside. Long Chen shrugged and said, turning around and planning to leave directly. But just as he had just walked a few steps, the little vendor's voice rang again behind him, and many more. The corner of Long Chen's mouth was lifted, showing a smug smile. Turned around and asked, what's wrong? Isn't it not for sale? Oh, forget it. The first time it opens today, it's like making friends with you. The small vendor pretended to suffer a big loss. Chapter 406. Yuanbao Pavilion. In fact, he didn't spend a penny on this jade pendant. When he was shopping for treasure in the countryside, this jade pendant was given to him by a farmer. He has been in this antique street for a while, but no one wants to look at this jade pendant. Now that some people want to buy, the small vendors are naturally reluctant to let it go. Is 10 yuan not money? Ha ha ha. Well, I'll make you a friend. Long Chen laughed and took the jade pendant. Then he took out his trouser pocket, suddenly a little embarrassed. He has no money on him now. Ahem, wife. Long Chen looked at Xiao Zihan and smiled awkwardly. The latter suddenly understood what he meant, and the corners of his mouth twitched. A big man can't even get 10 yuan when he goes out, which is why she has always looked down on Long Chen. If you ask me what you borrowed, I will pay you back in the future. Do you want to make an IOU? Seeing Xiao Zihan's expression like that, Long Chen said hurriedly, it's only $10. Take it. Xiao Zihan took out 100 yuan bill and threw it to the small vendor. The small vendor hurriedly accepted it, and then found 90 yuan for Xiao Zihan. Only then did Long Chen carefully put the jade pendant into his pocket. You said before that there are a lot of Toyan shops for these things. Why should you spend $10 here? Walking a little farther, Xiao Zihan couldn't help asking. Yi Qianxing smiled mysteriously. My wife, this jade pendant is a good thing. Pretending to be a god. I've seen this jade pendant, it's nothing special. Don't you have a better vision than me? Xiao Zihan didn't believe what Long Chen said at all, and Long Chen didn't explain much. In fact, he didn't know the origin of this jade pendant. Anyway, with such a strong yin, he must have stayed in the ancient tomb for a long time. Although I don't know how much it is worth, it is definitely more than $10. The two went shopping in Antique Street for a while, and finally Xiao Zihan took Long Chen into a shop called Yuanbao. Most of the Antique Street is a few small stalls, such as Yuanbao is rare with shops, because this Antique Street is located in the center of Jiangnan City. The land price is too high. In places with high traffic such as Antique Street, housing prices are several times higher than those outside. So it's definitely not ordinary to be able to open a shop here. This Yuanbao Pavilion is considered to be the most good stuff on this street. Let's not miss it. We just need to buy a good-looking antique. Xiao Zihan said, and began to choose. Long Chen was bored and looked around casually, and found that there were many antique calligraphy and paintings in the entire first floor. If he just looked at it like this, Long Chen is really dazzled. But if he uses the power of the soul, he will find that there are still a few antique calligraphy and paintings that exude yin. But the number is not large, which accounts for less than 1% of the total. Of course, this does not mean that the others are fakes. After all, not all antiques are found in ancient tombs. He saw that yin qi could only mean it came from the ancient tomb. When Long Chen saw an antique calligraphy and painting that exuded yin qi, he walked slowly and approached, and then absorbed yin qi. Restore your own soul. This is definitely not the painting that I have fancy. This one is obviously a fake. It must have been dropped when you just took it away. Just as Long Chen secretly absorbed those yin qi, a loud noise suddenly sounded. Long Chen looked in the direction of the voice, only to see an old man who appeared to be in his 50s arguing with the owner of Yuan Bulge with a flushed face, still holding a picture scroll in his hand. Long Chen casually looked at it, and this scroll did not exude yin. It must be a fake. Chapter 407. Drop package. Hey, I said, old man, you can't spit people. It's inevitable that people who come to this antique street to shop for treasure will get a wrong look and find fakes. This is your own misconception. It's nothing to do with me. You shouldn't say that I dropped the bag. Are you tarnishing my reputation of Yuan Bulge? I want to sue you for defamation and infringement of my right to reputation. The owner of Yuan Bulge is obviously an old fox, and he speaks differently, making the old man unable to argue. Almost a heart attack. Fart. I have been studying calligraphy and painting for more than 10 years. Although I don't understand it very well, I still don't even know that this is a fake. This painting of yours and the one I selected before are completely different from the one I chose. It's a fake. I'm not blind. I can't even see this. The old man flushed with anger and coughed. Hey, old man, don't touch porcelain here. Anyway, this painting was chosen by you. It is your own business whether it is true or not. And this shop is not responsible. Yuan Bulge's boss is still a calm look. No, let me watch the surveillance if you have the ability. Sorry, our store monitoring broke a few days ago and has not been repaired yet. It happens that the monitoring is broken at this time. How could it be so coincidental? You must be deliberate. You are a profiteer. The old man was so angry that he covered his chest, panting, and trembling violently. Long Chen's current medical strength has reached the level of a master, and he can see at a glance that the old man is suffering from a heart attack. If you don't hurry up for treatment, the old man will undoubtedly die. Long Chen was not a man with a heart of iron and stone, so he hurried forward a few steps, and focused a few times on the old man's chest. Hey! What are you doing? Do you dare to intervene with this thing? And you are not afraid of being ruined? I tell you, if something happens, it doesn't matter to me. The boss of Yuan Bulge saw that Long Chen was messing around with the old man and hurriedly separated his relationship. Long Chen turned his head, and cast his cold eyes on the boss. When did the boss see this look? His body shivered and collapsed to the ground. HMPH. If I'm not here, a life will be gone, and you are the murderer. Long Chen said coldly, stroked the old man's chest a few more times, and the flush on the latter's face disappeared a lot. HMPH. Pretending to be a fool, it's none of my business if this old man is dead. I haven't even touched him. Yuan Bulge's boss said weakly, but he didn't dare to look at Long Chen. He had never seen such a terrible look in his eyes. Man, thank you. The old man relieved, knowing that Long Chen had saved him, and thanked him. Long Chen smiled slightly and said, it's okay. Saving one's life is better than building a 7th level Buddha. This is what I should do, but your health is very poor now. If you are regenerating, it will not be so easy to save. I can't help being angry. The ancient paintings I bought for $1 million before were turned into fakes by this profiteer. The old man said angrily. Hearing this, Long Chen couldn't help but think secretly, this old man is really willing to buy a painting for $1 million. It seems that he is also a master who is not short of money. The reason why he is angry is still unwilling. He could also tell that the old man had a bad temper. It's okay. He'll help you. Long Chen patted the old man's shoulder and said softly. The old man looked at Long Chen with some doubts, wondering how he planned to help himself. But Long Chen had just rescued him, and he was ashamed to refuse Long Chen's kindness. I saw Long Chen stand up and look at the owner of Yuan Bulge. Chapter 408, Broken Jar. The boss of Yuan Bulge trembled, and the look in Long Chen's eyes was still dark in his heart. What do you want to do? Beating people is against the law. We are originally a fair transaction, and it is protected by law. What are you afraid of? I didn't say I want to hit you. Actually, I think it's reasonable to buy this painting for $1 million. Looking at Yuan Bulge's boss like this, Long Chen sneered in his heart, but he was really bullying and fearing evil. But he still smiled and said, what? The owner of Yuan Belge was confused by Long Chen's words. Obviously he didn't expect him to say that. Even the old man was stunned. Didn't this young man say to help himself? How could he help the black-hearted boss instead? Ha ha ha, you guys still have vision. So I just said, I'm a conscientious businessman. The owner of Yuan Belge was taken aback for a moment. But then he reacted. Although I don't know why Long Chen said this suddenly, it was clear that this sentence was beneficial to him. People watching the excitement around saw a scene, and they all shook their heads. I thought this young man was going to help the old man, but he didn't expect it to be a disservice. Since you are a conscientious merchant, why not give us another small item? After all, it cost $1 million. Long Chen continued smiling, and then pointed to a rusty copper pot on the shelf. That's it. The owner of Yuan Belge saw that Long Chen actually pointed at a rusty jar. His eyes suddenly lit up. This thing was given as a gift when he first purchased it, and has been thrown here casually. Unexpectedly, Long Chen actually took a fancy to this thing. The owner of Yuan Belge couldn't help wondering if Long Chen was afraid of revenge, so he came to help himself. Yes, just this. Is the boss willing to give it away? Long Chen smiled and nodded. Of course, I'm a conscientious merchant. This jar is given to you. The owner of Yuan Belge took the copper pot from the shelf and handed it to Long Chen. Long Chen took it down, opened his mouth slightly, and then secretly sucked. The yin qi from the copper pot was directly sucked away by him. Yes, this not surprisingly rusty copper pot is an antique, and judging from the yin air it exudes, it should be quite old. Boy, what do you mean? Why do you want a broken jar? The old man frowned and looked at Long Chen badly. If it weren't for being rescued by Long Chen before, he would think that Long Chen was playing tricks with the boss on purpose. Hey, father, don't be angry. This is not an ordinary broken jar, Long Chen said quickly, afraid that the old man would be angry. What's so unusual about a rusty copper pot? The old man was taken aback. He had been studying antiques for more than 10 years. The rusty copper pot was just a broken pot. Long Chen smiled mysteriously, just about to speak. At this moment, a person about the same age as the old man suddenly walked out of the crowd. Young man, can you show me this copper pot? The man stared at the rusty copper pot in Long Chen's hand and said. Long Chen looked at this person and didn't know him. On the contrary, the people around were shocked when they saw this person, including Yuan Belge boss and the old man around Long Chen. Professor Chen, it's Professor Chen, someone exclaimed. Who is Professor Chen? Long Chen asked the old man beside him. Don't you know? He is the most famous connoisseur of antiques in Jiangnan City. He has been in the industry for decades and has never been mistaken. The old man looked at Long Chen with weird eyes. Apparently he didn't even know Professor Chen. Chapter 409, Dragon Pot and Copper Jar. In the Ming Dynasty, the corner of Long Chen's mouth curled when he heard this. Why did he know Professor Chen? He didn't eat this bowl of rice. But of course he couldn't say it. People here looked like Professor Chen, like those star chasers. If he dared to say a word that he didn't know, he might be sprayed to death. Little brother, can you lend me a look at this copper pot? Seeing that Long Chen didn't speak, Professor Chen asked again. Of course. What do you think, boy? The old man beside Long Chen subconsciously nodded in agreement, but quickly realized that this was Long Chen's. So he looked at Long Chen again and asked his opinion. This is yours, you decide, Long Chen said with a smile. The old man hurriedly handed the copper pot to Professor Chen, and Professor Chen took it carefully and looked at it carefully. This scene made the owner of Yuan Belge a little puzzled. Isn't it just a broken jar? Why are they still paying so much attention? Boss, can you borrow water for use? Professor Chen asked the boss of Yuan Belge again. What he said was not ordinary water, but a kind of water specially used to wash away rust. Professor Chen, it's not necessary anymore. It's just a worthless broken can. The owner of Yuan Belge wondered. I don't think so, boss. Please trouble you. Professor Chen insisted that Yuan Belge's boss did not dare to refuse. After all, Professor Chen has a great reputation in the antique circle, and he dared not save face. Soon, a bucket of water was brought up, and Professor Chen hurriedly put the copper pot in, and then washed it carefully. After washing for more than 10 minutes, the rust on the copper tank was cleaned. A brand new copper pot appeared in front of everyone. I saw that there were several lifelike dragons on this copper pot. Wow, this copper pot actually contains the universe. Everyone looked at the dragon pattern on the copper pot and swallowed wildly. Even if you don't know how to do it, you can see that this copper pot is good. Professor Chen picked up the copper pot again, then took out the magnifying glass he carried with him, and checked it. After a while, Professor Chen suddenly exclaimed. Dragon pattern copper jar from the Xuan period of the Ming Dynasty. I was right, Professor Chen said excitedly. Dragon pattern copper jar, or was it from the Xuan period of the Ming Dynasty? Hearing Professor Chen's words, everyone present had their eyes widened. The dragon patterned copper jar is a very precious antique, but it is exclusive to the royal family. Not to mention that this was in the Xuan year of the Ming Dynasty, more than 600 years ago. The value may reach 10 million. Really? How could the dragon patterned copper jars in the Xuan period of the Ming Dynasty become like this? The boss of Yuan Bao asked incredulously. He didn't want to believe this fact. Professor Chen doesn't make mistakes. He said yes. Those 8 achievements are. Oh my god. The dragon patterned copper jar that has been used for more than 600 years can now sell for 8 or 9 million yuan anyway. If you want it, it is estimated that 10 million will be willing to sell. This old man has made a lot of money. 1 million makes 10 million, a tenfold increase. I missed it. Nima is so cool. The people around were so envious. The owner of Yuan Bao fell to the ground with a puff, and he was unlovable. Unexpectedly, if he didn't look at a broken jar in his eyes, it would actually be such a treasure. In order to make 1 million and lose 10 million, the real version picked up sesame seeds and lost watermelon. Brother, I pay 10 million for this dragon pattern copper pot. Would you like to sell it? Professor Chen asked the old man with fiery eyes. He likes collecting antiques the most. Appreciating antiques is just work. Many times when he finds something he likes, he will pay for it himself. Chapter 410, 10 million. There are very few antiques in the Ming Dynasty, let alone the dragon patterned copper jars owned by the royal family. Professor Chen was already shaking with excitement. Boy. The old man was not excited because Professor Chen shouted 10 million, and his face was very plain. He was obviously a rich man and didn't care about the 20 million. The old man looked at Long Chen and asked for his opinion. After all, Long Chen helped him obtain this copper pot. Master, this is already yours. It's up to you to sell it or not, Long Chen said with a smile. Well, let's sell it to you. The old man usually likes some calligraphy and painting, and he is not very interested in antiques. The old man said casually. It doesn't matter how much Professor Chen bids. If this is a calligraphy and painting, let alone 10 million, he will not be able to sell it if it doubles. But he is not really interested in antiques. Professor Chen laughed loudly when he heard the words, and hurriedly put the dragon patterned copper pot away carefully. Brother, after all, the amount of 10 million is relatively large, and it may take a lot of time to transfer money. Would you like to go through the transfer procedures with me? No, I believe you. This is my card number. You just need to go here. The old man reported a bunch of numbers casually, and he didn't even worry that the other party would be wrong. However, Professor Chen is a well-known person, and he should not be bad for 10 million. After all, there are still so many people watching. Okay, brother, I took it down and I will deal with it as soon as possible. Professor Chen hurriedly wrote down the card number. Young man, thank you. Not only did you save me, but you also gave me such a bad breath. This is my number. If you can't solve anything in the future, just call this number, the old man said to Long Chen again, and then reported a series of numbers. After listening to it, Long Chen almost remembered it. The old man was a little upset when he saw that Long Chen didn't use his cell phone or pen and paper to record the number. Young man, old man, my number is not given to people casually, you must know how to cherish it. Yes, I have already remembered. Long Chen gave a wry smile, fearing that the old man would be angry, so he pretended to pick up a piece of paper nearby and write it down. It's just that he didn't care much. What else could he not solve? If there is, then no one on the whole earth can solve it. Seeing that Long Chen had written down the number, the old man nodded in satisfaction. Professor Chen put the dragon patterned copper pot away and prepared to leave. At this time, Long Chen suddenly stopped him. Your name is Professor Chen, right? Hearing Long Chen's question, everyone around him suddenly became angry. Professor Chen's status in their hearts is no less than that of Zhang Zunkan in the hearts of those brain-dead fans. Long Chen can't even remember Professor Chen's name. It's really hateful. Is there anything wrong with their boy? Professor Chen heard Long Chen's voice and hurriedly asked. As for Long Chen not remembering his name, Professor Chen didn't care. He is still very interested in Long Chen, and he discovered the dragon patterned copper pot. The original rusty dragon pattern copper pot was thrown into a pile of rubbish. Even if he didn't see it, he didn't expect Long Chen to find it. To be able to see the true face of the dragon patterned copper jar requires a wealth of experience in appreciating treasures. But Long Chen is obviously only in his early 20s. How could he have such an eye? Professor Chen, I have another interesting thing here. Could you please help me see what it is? Long Chen said, taking out a jade pendant from his arms. Chapter 411, Priceless treasure, let me help you see. Professor Chen was taken aback. He saw that Long Chen could recognize such an antique as dragon patent copper jars. He should have a good understanding of Jian Bao. Why are you still asking yourself to help? But when Professor Chen saw the jade pendant in Long Chen's hand, all the words in his throat were swallowed. His eyes widened, only shock, because it was facing away. The people around couldn't see Professor Chen's expression. When they saw the jade pendant in Long Chen's hand, everyone showed disdain. For this jade pendant, whether it is texture or color, it is the next choice. It is basically the color that can be seen everywhere in the stall. Hee. Is this kind of stuff worthy for Professor Chen to observe? Yes, even I can see that this thing is worth $10 at most, the people around said with disdain. But Professor Chen's behavior soon shocked them, and saw that he reached out very urgently to grab the jade pendant in Long Chen's hands. However, Professor Chen was just an ordinary old man, whose speed was no match for Long Chen, and he was directly avoided by the latter. Ahem, I'm sorry, I'm too excited and a little gaff. Little brother, can you lend me this jade pendant for a look? Professor Chen realized his failure and hurriedly recovered, but his eyes were still fixed on the jade pendant in Long Chen's hand. Professor Chen, it's just an inferior jade pendant. Are you so excited? I have a lot of this kind of jade pendant in my house. A passerby wondered. A lot? If you have a lot of these things, you are probably the richest man in China. Professor Chen gave the person who spoke for nothing, then looked at Long Chen imploringly again. Long Chen grinned. Unexpectedly, this old guy's interest in antiques was so great. It's like an old bachelor who has been single for decades sees an undressed beauty. Of course, I just told you to help me see. Long Chen said non-committal, and then handed the jade pendant to Professor Chen. Although he could see that this jade pendant was an ancient antique, he did not know how much it was worth. That's why I asked Professor Chen to help him. After all, he still lacks money. Professor Chen hurriedly rubbed his hand on the clothes before he took the jade pendant carefully. Seeing this, I was 100 times more excited than just seeing the dragon pattern copper pot. Professor Chen took out a magnifying glass to observe on the jade pendant for dozens of minutes. His face changed again and again, flushing. Long Chen estimated that this guy would have a heart attack if he looked at it. Professor Chen, how about this jade pendant? Long Chen asked. Sure enough, the old man was right. This jade pendant was made by Hushan Jade, and if nothing else, this jade pendant should be a treasure from the Spring and Autumn period and Warring States period and the same period as he's by. Professor Chen trembled with excitement. Hushan Jade? He's by the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period? When Long Chen heard the words, he didn't know what Hushaniu was, but he had heard of Heshibi, and he had talked about it in elementary school texts. It seems to be a treasure of high value. Then how much is it worth? Long Chen asked. As soon as he said this, Professor Chen, including the crowd around him, looked at Long Chen with weird eyes. How much is it worth? It was made in the Spring and Autumn period and Warring States period, and it was made of Hushan Jade. He actually compares this kind of treasure to the vulgar thing like money. Little brother, let me tell you this. Experts have estimated that the price of his buy is at least 100 billion yuan. It is absolutely priceless. And your jade pendant is from the same period as his buy, and the material is also the same. It is very likely that it was made by Hushan Jade left over from the creation of Heshibi. Chapter 412, worth tens of billions. Although your jade pendant is inferior in value to his buy, it is definitely priceless. I personally value it for the time being, at least this number. Professor Chen stretched out 5 fingers. 500 million? Long Chen guessed, at least 5 billion. And this is only my lowest valuation. If it is put up for auction, it will definitely be sought after by many antique lovers, and the value may have to double. Professor Chen said solemnly, doubling that would be 10 billion. There are probably no more than 100 billionaires in China. 5 billion, is it okay? Professor Chen, would you like to buy it? Long Chen asked. Professor Chen's eyes were suddenly excited, but then they dimmed. Little brother, you really think highly of me. I want it, but I'm really ashamed. Even if my family is bankrupt, I can't buy 1% of this jade pendant. Professor Chen gave a wry smile. His mummy is used to buy antiques, and now there are very few funds available. Besides, even if he sells the antique collection, he can't afford this jade pendant. Well, Long Chen sighed. Although he knew the value and origin of this jade pendant, it was not easy to sell. After all, there are many people who like antiques worth tens of billions, but there are not many that can afford them. Little brother, are you really willing to sell this jade pendant? Professor Chen asked. Well, I am willing now. Long Chen nodded, but still added the word current. If he has other sources of money, he will not necessarily sell it. After all, this kind of priceless treasure is better to keep. Maybe there will be any surprises. Well, Brother, it is not convenient to leave a contact information. I will try my best to find a buyer for you. Professor Chen said that he plans to find some friends who also like to collect antiques, and tried to make up tens of billions. Although the possibility is very small, Professor Chen is not willing to just give up. Yes, but I don't have a cell phone, so please keep my wife's number, Long Chen said, and then looked at Xiao Zihan on the side. Of course Xiao Zihan was attracted to such a big event here. I was stunned by this scene a long time ago, first the dragon pet and copper pot, and then the Hushan jade, especially the latter. Xiao Zihan clearly remembered that this jade pendant was bought by Long Chen for 10 yuan before. She had seen it before, but she just put it back at a casual glance. How could she have imagined that a jade pendant made by Hushan jade during the Warring States period would appear in a stall? I bought it for 10 yuan, worth tens of billions. How many times is this? Xiao Zihan realized that he couldn't count it. My wife? Don't froze. I can remember my number. Long Chen stretched out his hand and waved in front of Xiao Zihan, who then came back to his senses. Thinking that Long Chen had lost his memory and really did not remember the number, Xiao Zihan had to report his number. She also knows Professor Chen. She knows that he is a well-known figure in the antique circle. It is a dream of many people to get his contact information. And she just got it unknowingly. Little brother, I'm leaving first, and I will call you right away when I find a buyer. After exchanging the phone numbers, Professor Chen hurriedly left. But just as he turned around, a small ball of light suddenly fell from his body. Ding! It is detected that there are pickable attributes nearby. Do you want to pick it up? The system prompt sounded in my mind. Chapter 413, Appreciation Pickup. Although Long Chen wondered how many attributes an old man could drop, he still chose to pick it up. There is no advantage. It is a bastard. Ding! Successfully picked up, and 1 LV1 of appreciation of treasures. As the white light entered Long Chen's body, the basic knowledge of appraising treasures was branded in Long Chen's mind. It's actually an appraisal technique. It doesn't seem to be very useful. Long Chen scratched his head, but he is not short of experience points now, so he directly spent 100,000 experience points to upgrade the skill of appreciation of treasures to the full level. Suddenly, his understanding of treasures had reached the level of a master, and even Professor Chen was inferior to him. Hey, Professor Chen, please wait. Xiao Zihan reacted and suddenly shouted. Finally met Professor Chen. She also wanted Professor Chen to help her choose an antique calligraphy and painting. It's a pity that Professor Chen has already gone far, and didn't even hear Xiao Zihan's shout. Wife, why do you call him? I'll pick it for you. Long Chen said. You know Jianbao. Xiao Zihan looked at Long Chen weirdly. He didn't remember that this guy still knew how to appreciate antique calligraphy and painting. However, when he thought of Long Chen's jade pendant, it seemed that he had missed it, and it was still leaking. Xiao Zihan couldn't help but believe it. Does this waste still have this ability? Why haven't you seen it before? Well, you pick it. Xiao Zihan said. Long Chen began to check in the store. After appreciation of treasures reached the full level, he could see through the authenticity of those antique calligraphy and painting at a glance. So I quickly picked a good calligraphy and painting. However, Yuan Baoji's boss was very upset with Long Chen because of the dragon pet and copper pot. He didn't want to sell him at all. One price, 10 million. The owner of Yuan Baoji said angrily. The price is clearly only 100,000. Oh, it's 10 million now. The owner of Yuan Baoji directly took the pen and drew 2 more zeros on the price tag, looking provocatively at Long Chen and Xiao Zihan. Xiao Zihan pointed at Yuan Baoji's boss angrily, but couldn't say anything. This is their shop, and it's really up to them to sell or not. It's okay. There are so many shops on Antique Street, let's change one. Long Chen said softly, although Xiao Zihan was still angry, but he could only do so. The two left Yuan Bao Pavilion, but when they went out, Long Chen suddenly turned around and sneered. Suddenly, he pointed to the antique calligraphy and painting on the first floor shelf and said, on this shelf, except for the genuine ones, the rest are fakes. You can figure it out. Long Chen pointed directly to a few antique calligraphy and paintings on the shelf, and said very loudly, because of the previous incident, many people gathered outside Yuan Bao Pavilion and heard Long Chen's words. Long Chen's cognition of antiques shocked them before, so they believed Long Chen's words very much. It is estimated that it will not be long before the many fakes in Yuan Bao Pavilion will spread out. Passenger flow will be greatly reduced. Yuan Baoji's boss stared sharply and sat on the ground. This is the fate of offending Long Chen. You don't actually need to be so awesome. Xiao Zihan frowned and said, for businessmen, preventing money from making money is equivalent to killing their parents. Such a hand by Long Chen is equivalent to ruining Yuan Baoji's reputation. How could it be unnecessary? He makes you upset with his wife, and I will ruin him. Long Chen said angrily. Chapter 414, The Cynicism of Mother-in-Law. Hearing Long Chen's words, Xiao Zhihan didn't know why. His heart was touched. Perhaps it was because the previous Long Yan waist was too long, and now it is the first time she has come forward for her, making her a little uncomfortable. Has he lost his memory and changed his personality? If that's the case, that's fine. Xiao Zhihan thought in his heart. The two went to the antique street for a while, and finally Long Chen found a valuable copybook for Xiao Zhihan with his full-level appraisal skills, called Stone's Eye Bailu. It was bought at a stall for 3,000 yuan, and its real value was at least 2 million, because it was written by Su Go, the third son of Su Shi in the Song dynasty. This Stone Creek transcript will be handed over to you, and you will give it to Grandpa personally over the birthday banquet, so that Grandpa will have a better impression of you. Xiao Zhihan said coldly, but Long Chen could hear the caring. The cold tone should be Xiao Zhihan's character, not specifically aimed at Long Chen. Holding Story of Stony Brook, the two of them left Antique Street, drove onto Ferrari and walked towards home. After a while, Ferrari creaked and stopped at the door of a villa that seemed to be worthwhile. This should be the home of Xiao Zhihan and that Long Yang. They opened a Ferrari and lived in a villa. It seems that my cheap wife is quite rich, and she is still rich and beautiful. As for how Long Yang approached Xiao Zhihan, Bai Fumai, although he looked good, he still couldn't reach the level of a little white face. Long Chen said he was very puzzled. What are you doing in a daze? Coming. Xiao Zhihan had already entered the villa, and when he saw that Long Chen was still outside, he shouted. Then, regardless of whether Long Chen heard it or not, he turned around and left. Long Chen hurriedly walked into the villa with slippers, and saw 3 people in the hall besides Xiao Zhihan. 1 man and 2 women. The man in his 40s, should be his father-in-law, and 2 women, one in their 40s, should be the mother-in-law. The other is 16 or 17 years old, with a slightly immature appearance and should be a student. Seeing that her appearance is similar to Xiao Zhihan by 5 points, she should be her younger sister, his wife's younger sister, or his sister-in-law. Long Chen quickly guessed the identities of those people. Oh, I heard that you ran around as soon as you woke up, so that Zhihan could find it for a while. If you want me to say you ran, it's okay to save Zhihan's hind legs. When she saw Long Chen, the woman was sneered. Although Lao Zhangren and sister-in-law didn't say anything, they could guess from the look they looked at Long Chen that they were not right with themselves. They should be very upset with Long Yang, the master of their body. Mom, just say a few words. Although Long Yang is awake, he has lost his memory, so he runs around. Xiao Zhihan spoke for Long Chen. Long Chen didn't know that Xiao Zhihan had never spoken for himself before, otherwise he would be surprised. HMPH, it was useless at first, and now it is amnesia, and it is probably even more useless. If I say it is better to die, it can save food for the country. The mother-in-law didn't care that Long Chen was there. She said coldly, Mom. Xiao Zhihan frowned, and it was not good for her mother to say so in front of Long Chen. What's more, everything that Long Chen had shown in Antique Street made her impression of Long Chen some changes. Perhaps, this man won't be as wretched as before. Chapter 415, A Good Dish. Let's do it. Let's not say it. By the way, you quickly pack it up. The father's birthday banquet will start tomorrow. By the way, Zhihan, are you ready for the birthday gift? Seeing that Xiao Zhihan was a little angry, the woman couldn't say anything anymore. Had to change the subject to the old man's birthday banquet. The old man refers to the current head of the Xiao family. Although the Xiao family is not the top-class family in Jiangnan City, it is also called second-rate. The Xiao group has a market value of several billion, otherwise Xiao Zhihan and his family would not be able to live in a villa and drive a Ferrari. Well, the birthday gift is ready. Put it on Long Yang, Xiao Zhihan said, but the mother-in-law's eyes widened as soon as the words came out. What? Did you put such an important thing as a birthday gift on Long Yang's waist? The mother-in-law exclaimed. Xiao Zhihan frowned when she heard her mother's left sentence waist and the right sentence waist. She looked at Long Chen, but found that Long Chen's expression was as usual, but he didn't even look angry at all. She couldn't help sighing. She thought Long Yang had changed, but she didn't expect it to be so useless. She didn't know how to refute it. In fact, he completely misunderstood Long Chen. If the other party scolded him, of course he would be angry. But the woman scolded was Long Yang. What's the matter with him, Long Chen? Let Long Yang give the birthday gift to Grandpa at the birthday banquet tomorrow. This will also make Long Yang have a better impression of Grandpa. Xiao Zihun said. You still let this waste give gifts? Zihun, are you crazy? The mother-in-law looked at Xiao Zihun incredulously. Although my own daughter is not as serious to Long Yang as her, she does not protect him as much as she does today. Okay, Zihun must have her own thoughts when she said so. Let her go. Finally, Father Xiao, the head of the family, spoke. It's dinner time, Long Yan, go cook rice and stir fry. Cooking? Long Chen was taken aback. Let him do this kind of thing by a big man? But when I thought of my current identity as a son-in-law, I had to accept it. Long Yang just left the hospital, let me come. Xiao Zihun said. This time Long Chen took the lead without waiting for his mother-in-law to speak. It's okay, let me come. Long Chen said, and walked towards the kitchen. However, he didn't know where the kitchen was, so he went in the wrong direction. The mother-in-law was given another opportunity to scold him. Aren't you having amnesia and still cooking? Xiao Zihun ran to the kitchen and asked doubtfully. Don't worry, it's okay to cook such a simple thing. Long Chen looked at Xiao Zihun with an okay gesture. His family runs a restaurant. Sometimes there are too many guests and Lin Fang, his mother, doesn't have enough time to cook, so he helps. I also learned a lot of cooking skills. Soon, after Long Chen was familiar with the kitchen facilities, he started to cook fluently. It didn't take long for a table of delicious dishes to be ready. Well, it smells so good. Little sister-in-law Xiao Zin couldn't help but praise as soon as she arrived at the table. This is a snack food. Although she is very disdainful of Long Yang's brother-in-law, she is not right to people when it comes to food. After taking a bite, I was full of praise. Mother-in-law Jiang Lan and Lao Zhang and Xiao Tan also took a bite, expressing their surprise. This is much better than the food Long Yan cooked before. Cut. What's the use of cooking? It's only worthy of being a housewife, and being able to go out to make money is a real skill. Although Jiang Lan thought the food was delicious, she still pretended to be unhappy, and said coldly. Chapter 416, this is basically a servant after eating a meal quickly. There is no doubt that Long Chen is responsible for cleaning the dishes after eating. At night, after Long Chen took a bath, he entered the bedroom. When he was taking a shower, he was still thinking that he and Xiao Zihun are now husband and wife. Are they going to share the bed? Sleeping with an unfamiliar woman, even if Long Chen has lived for thousands of years, it will inevitably be a little uncomfortable. Moreover, Long Chen felt even more nervous when he thought of what might happen between husband and wife. Not only do you occupy other people's body, but you also sleep with other people's wives. Isn't this a bit immoral? However, as Long Chen nervously entered the bedroom, he found that there was still a layer of bedding on the floor. He seemed to guess something. You always sleep on the floor. Seeing the doubt in Long Chen's eyes, Xiao Zihun actively explained. Always sleep on the floor. Wouldn't it be true that although Long Yang and Xiao Zihun have the name of a husband and wife, they are not as true as husband and wife? Thinking of this, Long Chen couldn't help but glance at Xiao Zihun again. Now that his medical skills have reached the level of a master of medical Dao, it is easy to see that Xiao Zihun is definitely still a young man. No, my body is not impotence. Why haven't I married Xiao Zihun for several years? Long Chen couldn't help thinking in his heart. Long Yang's body was obviously not problematic. Of course, he didn't know if there was any psychological problem. However, Long Chen was more willing to believe that Long Yang was okay, and it was Xiao Zihun who had the problem. It should be Xiao Zihun who kept preventing Long Yang from touching her. But it's okay to let me share the bed with a girl I just met, which is somewhat unsuitable. Long Chen let out a long sigh of relief and lay directly on the floor. In the early morning of the next day, Long Chen slept soundly, and was suddenly awakened by an external force. He conditioned a carp to stand up, and a figure beside him was directly frightened by his sudden move and squatted on the ground. Long Chen hurriedly took a look, only to discover that Xiao Zihun was next to him. Xiao Zihun originally wanted to wake Long Chen, but he didn't expect that the other party's reaction would be such a big deal. He actually came to a carp to beat him. She was startled, and at the same time wondering in her heart, when Long Yang this guy would be able to do this trick. Carp is very good. She can't do it without martial arts skills. What happened? Long Chen asked a little uncomfortably. Seeing that the sky outside was still dark, it was probably only about 6 o'clock. Everyone has the gas to get up, and he is no exception, let alone his impaired soul. Sleep is one of the best ways to recover. It's time to get up and get breakfast, or Mom will have a reason to scold you again. Xiao Zihun said. Get up at 6 for breakfast? Nima, who is a son-in-law, is a servant at all. And it's still the kind of servants who don't have a salary and only cover food and accommodation. But he was unhappy, and since he was awake, Long Chen didn't plan to go back to sleep. Go into the kitchen and start making breakfast. After eating breakfast, Zhang Lan, Xiao Dan, Xiao Zihan and Xiao Xin all went into the room to get dressed. When he came out, he was already dressed up and looking at Long Chen, just staying in the living room, wearing a pajamas and stepping on a pair of slippers. "Why are you stunned here? The old man's birthday banquet will begin soon. Are you still here in a daze?" Zhang Lan's eyes widened and yelled at Long Chen. "Birthday feast?" Long Chen was taken aback, and then reacted. Xiao Zihan did tell him yesterday that today is the birthday party of the head of the Xiao family. However, he was very upset when he got up too early this morning, so he just forgot. Chapter 417, That young man. Long Chen hurriedly went back to the bedroom to change clothes, but after coming out, Zhang Lan became even more angry. Because Long Chen dressed too casually, with short sleeves on his upper body and casual pants on his lower body. It's probably unique to attend Father Xiao's birthday banquet like this. It's a waste of things that are not enough to fail. If you dress like this, our family can't be laughed at. Originally because of your existence, our family is not liked by the old man. You dare to dress like this? Not. Zhang Lan still wanted to yell at Long Chen, but Xiao Zihan interrupted when he saw that it was not good. "That's it. It's too late to change. Grandpa will be unhappy if he is late," Xiao Zihan said. Zhang Lan checked the time, and it was indeed late. Finally, he glared at Long Chen and hurriedly went downstairs. Xiao Zihan also glared at Long Chen, but finally sighed, because she knew that it was not that Long Chen didn't wear good clothes, but that he didn't have good clothes at all. "Let's go. Remember, don't talk during the birthday banquet, let alone upset Grandpa," Xiao Zihan exhorted as he went out. Long Chen just kept nodding. The family drove 2 cars and drove in the direction of the Xiao family. And just as Long Chen and others went to attend the birthday banquet, an old man was lying on the bed in a VIP ward. In the ward, many people gathered at this time. "All go out. So many people are crowded in the ward. Do you want to disturb my father to rest?" A middle-aged Chinese character face suddenly said softly, although the voice is not loud, but full of majesty. Everyone present did not dare to disobey, and left the ward one after another. At this time, there were 2 other people in the ward besides the old man and the middle-aged man with the national character face. One is a bald man, the other is a girl of 16 or 17. These 2 are not others, but Uncle Tu and Miss Su. And lying on the hospital bed was the old man Su, who was saved by Long Chen himself. As for the middle-aged national character face, his identity is not simple, as can be seen from the high-ranking aura emanating from him. "Shintu, what is going on?" The middle-aged man with Guozi face looked at Uncle Tu and asked in a deep voice. Although the words of the middle-aged Guozimian did not seem to blame, Uncle Tu, a powerful warrior, was actually nervous in front of the middle-aged Guozimian. "Patriarch, it's all my fault. I didn't protect my father, please punish you." Uncle Tu lowered his head and clasped his fists. "Tell me what happened." The middle-aged Guozilian still said calmly. His identity does not allow him to be nervous and worried. Yes, Uncle Tu didn't conceal it, he told everything directly without concealing it at all. "Have you found the identity of those black-clothed killers?" The tone of the middle-aged Guozi face finally changed a little, completely cold. "Not yet, but I guess 80% of them may belong to the Song family. After all, if something happens to the old man, it would be most beneficial to them." Uncle Tu guessed. Without evidence, guessing is not enough. "Yes, I will find evidence as soon as possible," Uncle Tu said firmly. "By the way, you just talked about a young man. If it weren't for him, I'm afraid the old man would not be able to recover." The middle-aged Guozilian suddenly remembered the young man mentioned in Uncle Tu's previous words and asked, "Yes, Patriarch, even the genius Dr. Bai believed that the old man was not saved, but the young man showed up. He just tapped the old man and the old man's blood stopped." The genius Dr. Bai said, "Fortunately, the young man stopped the bleeding for the old man, otherwise the old man would definitely not be able to support the arrival of the ambulance." Even the genius Dr. Bai admires the young man very much. As soon as he talked about Long Chen, Uncle Tu's expression became excited, as if he could not finish talking. Chapter 418, Special Quirks. Dr. Bai, but the dean of the first hospital, Dr. Bai Renshan, seeing that Uncle Tu was so excited in the middle-aged Guozilian, he couldn't help being a little curious about the young man in his mouth. "Yes," Uncle Tu hurriedly nodded. "In the whole Jiangnan city, besides Bear Mountain, who else would dare to call the word genius doctor?" Hearing this, the middle-aged face of Guozi also became solemn. "There are few people in the world who even admire the genius Dr. Bai. What's more, according to Shintu, this is only a young man in his 20s. Do you know his identity?" "I don't know. He left after saving the old man, but I have sent someone to check it. and there should be news soon. Before Shentu finished speaking, the phone rang suddenly. He picked it up and looked a little weird. Said cow 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 would be there, and the person opposite this phone was the person he sent to investigate Long Chen. After receiving it, Shentu respectfully looked at the Chinese character face in front of him. Patriarch, it has been clear that the young man's name is Long Yang, who is in this city, and belongs to the Xiao family. What? Seeing that Shentu didn't say half of his words, the middle-aged Guo Zillion asked quickly. Isn't this a silly appetite? A daughter or son-in-law? The target is the daughter of the second son of the Xiao family, Xiao Zihun. Shentu said with a weird expression. Then the legendary young man would actually be a son-in-law. Do talents have special hobbies? Not only Shentu, but even the middle-aged Guo Zillion was speechless when he heard this. Only Miss Su, who was eavesdropping on the side, heard that Long Chen had a wife. Her eyes dimmed instantly. She doesn't know why. Knowing that Long Chen is already married, she seems to have lost something in her heart. Anyway, the old man was also rescued by that Long Yang. Sent someone to find him. The middle-aged national character face thought for a while and said, yes. After hearing this, Shentu hurriedly prepared to call to make arrangements. But at this moment, an old voice suddenly sounded. In my opinion, you should bring the gift to visit. As soon as this sound came out, the three people in the ward looked at the bed at the same time. When they saw that the old man had opened his eyes, the three of them were suddenly excited. Although the doctor has said that the old man is out of danger, they can feel relieved when he really sees the old man wake up. Father, how do you feel when you wake up? The middle-aged Guo Zillion was calm before the big change, squatted down quickly and asked worriedly. Don't worry, I can't die. I heard what you said just now. That young man saved my life. Don't you think you should bring gifts to visit and thank people? Although Mr. Su's voice is still a bit weak, he is already very good to be able to speak. This. The middle-aged Guo Zillion hesitated after hearing this. What kind of status is he? Let him personally bring gifts to thank a young man. To be honest, he didn't want to do this. Master, this is not so good. As the head of the family, Shentu also hurriedly persuaded him, but he was interrupted by Elder Su before he finished speaking. What? Isn't my life worth your face, old man? Ahem. Elder Su shouted angrily, coughing a few times with anger, scared the middle-aged Guo Zillion and Shentu nervous. Father, don't get excited, I will go personally. Go personally. The middle-aged Guo Zillion said hurriedly. No matter what, let the old man rest first. But Elder Su sighed as he was so mature. How could he not see that the Chinese character face was perfunctory in his middle age? Go Li, don't you know what it means to be a father? Think about it. Such a young person has the medical skills that even the genius Dr. Bai is amazed by. Is this kind of talent not worthy of your personal visit? The muddy eyes of old man Su stared at the middle-aged man with the face of Guo Zi. The latter's expression was stagnant, but he quickly reacted and knew what his father meant. A young man with such horrible medical skills is definitely worthy of their Su family swooning. Not to mention, this superb medical skills alone can save their lives at a critical moment. Yes, father, I understand. I will bring a gift to visit him in person. The middle-aged Guo Zillion said solemnly. This time it is no longer perfunctory. You have to go right away. Father Su added a sentence. Yes, Shentu. Where is Long Yang now? Xiao Family Courtyard. Chapter 419, Xiao Family Shuyan. The Xiao family is a second-rate family in Jiangnan City, and its owner, Mr. Xiao, has a very high status in Jiangnan City. The Xiao Family Courtyard is a Chinese-style courtyard. It is not an ordinary person who can live in a Chinese-style courtyard in a city like Jiangnan. In addition to being rich, you have to have connections and connections. The Xiao family's compound is like a city. Today is Father Xiao's birthday banquet. Some well-known entrepreneurs in Jiangnan and some families who have a good relationship with the Xiao family came to celebrate their birthday. The family of Long Chen and Xiao Zihan finally arrived before the birthday banquet began, and hurried in after getting off the car. In the hall, the guests were full, laughing and laughing. Everyone was presenting birthday gifts. I saw a place in the yard, at this time, full of birthday gifts, all of which are precious things, not a common product. Oh, Xiaotan, you guys are pretty good. Step on it. Hey, it's not the latest. How can you be different? As soon as Xiaotan's family arrived in the hall, they were ridiculed by their relatives. Zhang Lan's expression turned blue and purple, and then looked at Long Chen angrily. If it weren't for this waste, how could they have come so late? Father, sorry, we are late. Xiaotan also had a terrible expression. He looked at Mr. Xiao, who was sitting in the main seat, and hurriedly said respectfully. Elder Xiao's expression was indifferent, and he couldn't see if he was angry. For Xiaotan's apology, He just waved his hand casually. Find a seat. Yes, father. Xiaotan nodded respectfully, and then walked aside with the family. There is my family's area. Xiaotan, Zhang Lan and Xiao Zihan were all seated, and when Long Chen was about to sit down, the chair was suddenly taken away. Long Chen frowned, just about to get angry, but immediately remembered that Xiao Zihan had told him not to make trouble, and still held back. No wonder Xiao Zihan told him to stop talking and make trouble. It turns out that there are so many people here who want to target him. Xiao Zihan, don't you look at what occasion this is? It's also that Long Yang's trash can get on the stage. Bring him. Isn't this making Grandpa shame at his birthday party? If you want me to say it, let him stand aside. A tall woman with bright eyebrows and apricot eyes spoke. Long Chen's chair was dragged away by her. Yes, Zihan, Xiao is right. On such an important occasion, did you let Long Yang come here on purpose? Not deliberately disgusting? And you actually want him to sit with us? If I want to say it, let him stand aside. Everyone in the Xiao family also stood up and gave pointers, showing disgust towards Long Chen. Xiao, the second son of the Xiao family, the daughter of Xiaotan's younger brother, is acrimonious. It looks pretty good, but it instantly turns into a green leaf next to Xiao Zihan, which can only bring out Xiao Zihan's beauty even more. Therefore, Xiao was jealous of Xiao Zihan, and she was very at odds with her, and she had to deliberately find fault every time she met. Since Xiao Zihan and Long Yang got married, Xiao had one more chance to find fault, and that was Long Yang. Xiao Zihan married a waste, but Xiao married a famous young talent in Jiangnan City. This incident made Xiao Mei's blow to Xiao Zihan even more severe. Long Chen frowned as he listened to the people around him. Let him stand aside? You know, the servants standing on the sidelines. Didn't this equate him with those servants? Chapter 420, Rain Bamboo. Xiao, what do you mean? Long Yang is my husband, and that is from the Xiao family, who has the right to sit down. Grandpa didn't say anything. Where's your turn? Xiao Zihan frowned likewise, and said unceremoniously. She wasn't all for Long Chen, but Xiao Mei's move was simply provoking her. Hee, you will admit that he is the Xiao family. We don't want to be a family with him. Xiao looked at Long Chen with disdain. Long Chen frowned, and the mud Bodhisattva would also become angry, not to mention that he was the Lord of the universe before, and he was decisive. Had it not promised Xiao Zihan not to make trouble, he would have slapped this bitch's face with a slap. Okay, Maya. There is no need to be angry about this kind of waste. Today is Grandpa's birthday. Let this waste take advantage of it and take a seat once. At this moment, a young man beside Xiao suddenly spoke. This young man is in his 20s and looks pretty good, with delicate skin but pale face. Long Chen, who is proficient in medicine, can tell at a glance that this guy has kidney deficiency. It is estimated that Xiao was squeezed dry before coming. This Xiao looked like that kind of particularly strong sexual desire, and the young man is just a wine sack and rice bag, which is squeezed dry once a day. It is strange that the kidney is not weak. As soon as the youth spoke, Xiao had to give up targeting Xiao Zihan and Long Chen. Long Chen silently took the chair back and sat on it. The birthday banquet enters the gift-giving link. After the guests have given their gifts, it is the family's turn to give gifts. The young man stood up first and presented a very delicate gift box in the eyes of the crowd. Grandpa, my grandson knows that you like antique calligraphy and painting the most, so I specially bought a pair of Tang Bo's famous painting Rainbow Picture for you as a birthday gift. With a smile on his face, the young man handed the gift box up. Father Xiao was very excited when he heard that it was Tang Bo's calligraphy and painting. Indeed, as the young man said, Father Xiao loved calligraphy and painting the most in his life, so most of the guests who came here gave away calligraphy and painting. It's just a lot worse than the rainbow picture given to Tang Bo by the youth. Tang Bo's rainy bamboo picture? Oh my god, that is one of Tang Bo's most famous paintings, and it is worth at least 10 million. Cut. Tens of millions is nothing to Zhang Dashao. It is just a few months of pocket money. The most important thing is that Tang Bo's paintings are priceless, and no one can buy them with money. Zhang Daishonin, I'm afraid it took a lot of thought to get it. The surrounding guests were shocked when they heard that this painting turned out to be Tang Bo's painting, and they exclaimed, of course, it is not ruled out that it is to flatter young people. These words fell in the young man's ears, which also made his heart float. Ha ha ha, King Feng. You can have such filial piety. Grandpa is very happy. Maya really didn't misunderstand the wrong person. It is her blessing to marry you, and it is also the blessing of my Xiao family. Old man Xiao laughed and said, very satisfied with this grandson-in-law. He has a good status, and he is very respectful to his grandfather. Unlike a certain trash, it really humiliated the reputation of the Xiao family. Thinking of this, Elder Xiao couldn't help but glance at the area where Xiao Zihan's family sat, extremely dissatisfied. Jiang Qingfeng noticed Elder Xiao's gaze, and the corner of his mouth grinned, revealing a sneer. I plan to pour a bowl of oil on this fire. Longyan, our family's gifts have already been given. It's your turn, eh? Why are you holding a broken book in your hand? Isn't this a birthday gift for Grandpa? Chapter 421. Broken book. As soon as Jiang Qingfeng said this, everyone's eyes were immediately directed to Long Chen. When everyone saw Long Chen holding a broken book in his hand, they all looked strange. Elder Xiao held a broken book at his birthday banquet. Even if it was not a birthday gift, this behavior was obviously disrespectful to the old man. Sure enough, after Father Xiao noticed the broken book in Long Chen's hand, his face also became gloomy. Yes, this is the gift I gave to Grandpa. Long Chen nodded and said, but when it came to the word grandfather, he was a little hard to tell. After all, in terms of true age, I guess I can be the ancestor of this old man. Call him Grandpa, and don't know if he can stand it. Him going, it's really a birthday gift for Grandpa. Isn't this broken book bought from which stall, right? Long Yang, it's not that I said you. Even if you don't have money to buy gifts, you can't just buy a broken book. Didn't this intentionally embarrass Grandpa at the birthday party? Jiang Qingfeng pretended to be heartbroken, as if he was really embarrassed for Mr. Xiao. Elder Xiao, who was sitting in the first place, looked at him coldly, and said nothing. Xiao Zihan's face was pale, but he was also a little worried, because Jiang Qingfeng was right in saying that this broken book was indeed bought from a street stall. However, at that time, Long Chen vowed to say that this book was the Stone Creek transcript written by Su Go, the third son of Su She, and Long Chen's previous work in Yuan Bao Pavilion made her believe in Long Chen. But at this time, she couldn't help being a little nervous. What if Long Chen really doesn't understand Yuan Bao? Broken book. This is the real story of Stony Brook by Su Go. Long Chen glanced at Jiang Qingfeng with disdain. Unexpectedly, when Long Chen said this, it caused a roar of laughter. A broken book, actually said to be Su Guo's story of Stony Brook. You know, although Su Guo's reputation is not as good as that of his father Su She, his works are also extraordinary. Not to mention that Stony Brook Records is still one of Su Guo's best works, but it hasn't been seen for many years. How could it appear in the hands of a wasteful son-in-law? Long Yang, do you treat all of us present as fools? You said that a broken book was Su Guo's Stone Brook Records. In my opinion, you have been pitted. Tell me about this broken book. How much did it cost you? Jiang Qingfeng laughed. Long Jin's eyes dimmed, and he kept tolerating. But what he got was only the other side's gain. This makes him very upset. Therefore, he decided that he couldn't bear it, no longer to bear it. It's not like someone who has eyes and no beads. I can't even tell the truth of Tang Bo's paintings. That fake is a treasure. Long Chen said coldly. As soon as this was said, the surrounding guests looked strange. Xintao Longyan, the trash son-in-law, was so annoyed that he could even say such silly things. Dignified young Master Jiang, how could he come up with fakes? Different from the guests' reaction, Jiang Qingfeng's expression suddenly changed when he heard Long Jun's words, and then he was full of anger. You rubbish, don't know what nonsense, I'm the real rainbow picture by Tang Bong. Jiang Qingfeng said angrily. In fact, if it were to be genuine, Jiang Qingfeng would not be so angry, but because he knew that the painting was a fake, he would be so angry when he was nervous. In other words, he is not angry, he is using anger to cover up his nervousness. Chapter 422, Fake Long Yang. Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Zihan also gave Long Chen a quick glance and whispered, talking nonsense in front of Grandpa will anger Grandpa. Do you believe me? Long Chen ignored Jiang Qingfeng's roar, but looked at Xiao Zihan and asked. Xiao Zihan was taken aback when he heard this, but he didn't expect Long Chen to ask such words. For a while, I didn't know how to answer. Don't believe it. She did not believe it, but she couldn't tell. Because no matter how bad this person is, at least in name it is also her Xiao Zihan's husband. If it is in the public, even her wife would choose not to believe it. Then Long Yang would really be laughed to death. So after struggling for a while, Xiao Zihan nodded. Long Chen smiled slightly and turned his head to look at Jiang Qingfeng. Same trash, then not as good as trash. Since you don't give up, then I will let you give up. Tang Bo did of the rainbow picture, and the appearance is indeed very similar to this one. But unfortunately, it is only similar after all. I have to say that the person who copied this painting is really strong, and the reduction rate is as high as 100%. 90. But it's a pity that Tang Bo's emphasis is not on form. Long Chen shook his head and said with a pity that the form is easy to imitate, but it doesn't work. Otherwise, even if it is a fake, the value of this painting is extremely high. This knowledge is brought to him by his full-level appraisal skills. After hearing what Long Chen said, some of the guests had some understanding of calligraphy and painting, and they all felt that Long Chen's words made sense. Jiang Qingfeng swallowed, but still insisted. You talk so much nonsense. It's nothing more than learning from those novels and televisions. What kind of shape or meaning is too illusory? If you really want to prove that my painting is fake, then show evidence. Jiang Qingfeng couldn't help but feel a little nervous when seeing Long Chen talking in a set, which was really professional. But when he thought of buying, the seller said that the similarity reached more than 90. Unless he is a professional, it is impossible to find the problem. So Jiang Qingfeng was relieved. As long as there is no evidence, no one will believe what Long Chen said. Haha, is there any evidence? I'm sorry, there is. Long Chen had guessed that Jiang Qingfeng had said so, and sneered. The person who copied the picture of rain bamboo is indeed very professional, but unfortunately, he made a small mistake. That is, the name on the pen stamp. First name. Jiang Qingfeng looked at the last seal on the painting. No problem, it's Tang Bong. So if you have eyes but no beads, the Tang Bong written on it is wrong. Long Yan, are you mad? I have said that this is Tang Bo's painting. What's wrong with the signature of Tang Bong? You really want to discredit me? You can say anything, Jiang Qingfeng said coldly. However, he immediately discovered that the guests did not laugh this time. Can't help but wonder, what's wrong with them? Oh, even if you want to buy a fake, you should first understand Tang Bo's paintings. The signature seal of his paintings is never Tang Bong, but Tang Yin. This is his name. As for Bong, it is his word. Long Chen shook his head and said, he knew this knowledge even if he hadn't obtained the appraisal technique. This Qingfeng was also a well-educated son of a wealthy family, and he didn't even know this basic knowledge. Chapter 423, Nadia is a horse. Maybe this name was used when Tang Bo painted the picture of rain bamboo. Jiang Qingfeng blushed and said. Long Chen sneered and shook his head. The evidence had already shown that to this extent, Jiang Qingfeng was even more stiff. Then he has nothing to say. Grandpa, it must be this talking nonsense, slandering Qingfeng. How could Qingfeng give you a fake? Xiam hurriedly stood up and said, are I talking nonsense? Grandpa can tell at a glance. Grandpa has studied calligraphy and painting for many years. This little problem can definitely be seen. Long Chen shrugged and said, anyone who knows a little about Tang Bo can see this small mistake. He didn't believe that old man Xiao would not see it. Father Xiao took the gift, took out the picture of rain bamboo, and watched it for several minutes. Suddenly laughed. Yes, this is indeed Tang Bo's rainbow picture. Qingfeng, you are spending money. When Elder Xiao said this, the guests were stunned. But who was not a human being, instantly understood what Elder Xiao meant, and clapped and laughed. Elder Xiao's wise eyes no beads. This is indeed Tang Bo's rainbow picture. Unexpectedly, this waste of Long Yang couldn't produce good things by himself, and framed others. It's really a villain. Long Yang, do you think that Grandpa and the guests can see it? But you don't want to think about what identity you are, what identity I am. How could Grandpa be biased towards you? Jiang Qingfeng walked to Long Chen's side and sneered softly. A triumphant smile was raised at the corner of his mouth. Jiang Qingfeng is the young master of the Jiang family. As a first-class family, the Jiang family is much better than the Xiao family. Elder Xiao also counted on him to help connect the two families and let the Jiang family help the Xiao family more. How could he be embarrassed in such a place? As for the surrounding guests, he didn't dare to offend his Jiang family, so even if he knew that the painting was indeed fake, he would still say it was true. Seeing this, Long Chen narrowed his eyes, and his eyes were full of chills. Pointing to the deer as the horse, the truth is not disputed. At this time he was very disappointed with the Xiao old man and the Xiao family. Xiao Zihan, take care of you, a trash man, and don't let him bite people. Seeing Grandpa and all the guests standing on their side, Xiam was proud of her. He said coldly towards Xiao Zihan. Xiao Zihan looked at Long Chen, his long eyelashes trembling. Do you don't understand Jianbao at all? Is this book also a fake? It's not the Stony Brook transcript at all. Zihan, this is true. Long Chen shook his head and said, cut, don't give up. If that's the case, then let you give up. Show your broken book to Grandpa, and let him tell whether this broken book is true or not. Xiao sneered. She believed that this broken book must be a fake. The master Xiao, who was the subject, was glaring at hearing this. Long Chen was able to see the authenticity of the picture of rain bamboo, indicating that he was indeed capable of appraising treasures. Such a person should not be pitied by a broken book. So Father Xiao thought that this broken book might really be Suguo's Stone Creek notes. If it really is, then it is the boss of value for Mr. Xiao. Ahem, yes, you can come to a conclusion by showing it to me if it is true. Elder Xiao said. It was actually a little embarrassing to say this, but in order to take a look at Shix's transcript, Old Man Xiao still pulled off his old face. Chapter 424, Those who have eyes and no beads are not qualified to see, but Long Chen won't give him face. He has always been a character that people respect 1 foot and 1 jang, and people disrespect him 100-fold. The Old Man Xiao slandered him in front of so many people and accused him of being a horse, which made him very unhappy. Sorry, for some people who have eyes but no beads, they are not qualified to watch Stony Brook's records. Long Chen said coldly. It's just that when he said this, the audience was in an uproar. What does this mean? Those who have no eyes are not qualified to look at it. Isn't he aimed at Old Man Xiao? He actually said that in front of Mr. Xiao, in front of so many guests. Isn't this a face slap in public? With Father Xiao's character, how could he endure it? Sure enough, as soon as Long Jin's voice fell, Grandpa Xiao's face sank directly. Long Yang, what do you mean? Dare to be disrespectful to Grandpa? Don't you want to hang out in Xiao's house? Jiang Qingfeng reacted with a sneer in his heart, scolding Long Chen as being stupid, and even daring to speak to Old Man Xiao like this. So he unceremoniously came to add fuel to the fire. Presumptuous. Long Yang, you are so bold. Dare to speak to Grandpa like this. This kind of person is not worthy to stand on the ground of my Xiao family. Xiao Zihan, take a look at your man. It's just a waste. You don't respect the elders. If you want me to say, this kind of person should leave. The surrounding Xiao family members all spoke up, arguing for Old Man Xiao. Elder Xiao's face fell into the water, and finally spoke. Our Xiao family does not allow such disrespectful elders to exist. From now on, you will not be allowed to step into my Xiao family for half a step, nor will you be allowed to have half a relationship with my Xiao family. Any Xiao family dare to contact Long Yang again, and expel the Xiao family from now on. Father Xiao looked at Xiao Zihan and the family of Xiao Dan, Jiang Lan, and Xiao Zhen, and his meaning was obvious. The following sentence is for them. Xiao Zihan's face suddenly changed when he saw this, and he hurried forward. Grandpa, Long Yang must be too anxious to say this. Please give him a chance. Long Yang quickly apologized to Grandpa. Xiao Zihan stared at Long Chen and said, HMPH, if an apology is useful, wouldn't everyone be able to make mistakes unscrupulously? Jiang Qingfeng fanned the flames and said. Xiao Zihan ignored Jiang Qingfeng, just stared at Long Chen and asked him to apologize quickly. But Long Chen didn't want to endure anymore. He was not a person who likes to endure. The reason why he endured it until now was because of this body. I'm right, why should I apologize? What's more, he can't bear my apology. Long Chen said in a cold voice, without any scruples about the grandfather. Xiao's face snapped. As soon as Long Jin's voice fell, a clear applause suddenly sounded. Xiao Zihan slapped Long Chen in the face. This scene shocked everyone present, and the audience was silent. No one wanted to think that Xiao Zihan would actually beat people. There is a good show. The corner of Jiang Qingfeng's mouth raised, and he looked lively. Xiao Zihan was too anxious to slap this slap, and only after hitting Long Chen's face did he react. He quickly took his hand back, with a look of guilt. Sorry, Before Xiao Zihan finished speaking, Long Chen waved his hand to stop him. No need to apologize. I deserve this slap. You have suffered a lot because of me over the years. I will return this slap to you. From now on, we will no longer be involved. Long Chen's face was calm, and after speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. Chapter 425, Mayor Su arrives. To be honest, he didn't react to that slap. He also didn't expect Xiao Zihan to do it. But fortunately, receiving this slap is a clear grievance for this body and Xiao Zihan. In fact, he didn't have any hatred for Xiao Zihan, but he also didn't have any love. He returned to the earth so hard to see his mother and sister again. If he were still with Xiao Zihan, he probably wouldn't have much time to spend with his family. Therefore, this is a good time to draw a clear line. Long Yang. Xiao Zihan stretched out his hand, trying to hold Long Yang, but the hand just stretched out and then put it back. She didn't know if she had feelings for Long Yang. Over the years, Long Yang has been too wasteful, making her lose face in front of everyone. She has always hated Long Yang, but now that he saw Long Yang walk away without looking back, he wanted to draw a line with her. Somehow, Xiao Zihan always felt that he was missing something in his heart. Whether he wants to draw a clear line with you, you are so good. There are so many young talents who like you. Without him, You will only live better. Jiang Lan walked behind Xiao Zihan and comforted. Get out now. Don't defile the land of the Xiao family. Seeing Long Chen leaving, the Xiao family members were all cynicism. But Long Chen couldn't hear him, and walked toward the door. But just after 2 steps, the door of Xiao Mansion suddenly opened. A security guard ran in and said to Mr. Xiao, Master, Mayor Su is here with people and gifts, just outside the door. As soon as the security guard said this, all the guests present were shocked, and even old man Xiao trembled in shock. If he heard it right, the security guard said Mayor Su, the dignified Mayor Su, the leading figure in Jiangnan City, actually visited his Xiao family, and he came with a gift. Could it be to attend his birthday banquet? Elder Xiao felt that Bia had a face in an instant. Mayor Su, who has always been able to deal with everything, came to attend the birthday banquet in person. Who in the whole Jiangnan city can have this honor? Why are you still stunned? Please come in, Mayor Su, Elder Xiao said quickly. The security guard ran out quickly, and soon led a group of people in. When seeing the appearance of the group of people headed, all the guests in the hall stood up. Hello Mayor Su, they shouted in unison, unexpectedly neatly. Elder Xiao stood up and ran a few steps forward, with a smile on his face. Mayor Su's visit to the humble house. Xiao Jiping's sun is shining. Elder Xiao said with a very flattering smile. This is Mayor Su, even the heads of the top-class families in Jiangnan must be respectful. Not to mention a second-rate Xiao family in his mere trifle. Ha ha ha, Xiao Lao is serious. I am uninvited to speak, and I hope Xiao Lao will not blame it. Mayor Su laughed. Seeing Mayor Su treat himself so politely, Father Xiao feel refreshed. Mayor Su, I should have given you an invitation, but I am worried that you are busy with official duties, so I did not bother you. Come here, what are you doing in a daze? Give up your seat to Mayor Su. Elder Xiao shouted towards the Xiao family. No, I'm really busy. I can't stay for long. In fact, I'm looking for someone this time. Mayor Su waved his hand to reject the Xiao family's concession, and then said, hearing that he was actually here to find someone, old man Xiao couldn't help being taken aback. I don't know who in their Xiao family can be worthy of Mayor Su's visit in person. Chapter 426. Got the wrong person. Who is Mayor Su looking for? Elder Xiao asked in doubt. Your grandson-in-law. Mayor Su said. Grandson-in-law. Upon hearing Mayor Su's words, all the guests, including the Xiao family members, looked at Jiang Qingfeng at the same time. Old man Xiao's grandson-in-law. It looks like this is the only one. No, besides Jiang Qingfeng, there is also Long Yang. But this was directly ignored by them. How could the head of the city and Jiangnan city know this waste? What's more, just now, Long Yang was no longer the son-in-law of the Xiao family. Jiang Qingfeng was also stunned. He heard Mayor Su say that he was looking for Mr. Xiao's grandson-in-law, and he also subconsciously considered himself. But he didn't remember the intersection between him and Mayor Su. After all, even his grandfather, the head of the Jiang family, would have to cringe in front of Mayor Su. However, Jiang Qingfeng didn't even think about it at this time. He was very excited at this time. Mayor Su actually came to look for himself, which is a big face. Therefore, Jiang Qingfeng triumphantly walked to Mayor Su in the eyes of everyone's envy. Ha ha ha, Mayor Su, you just asked me to send someone to say it, why bother to come over in person? Jiang Qingfeng laughed and stretched out a hand towards Mayor Su. Don't look at him now laughing, but he is very nervous. This was the first time he had close contact with Mayor Su. Mayor Su saw Jiang Qingfeng stretch out his hand, and hurriedly stretched out a hand to hold him, and smiled at the same time. You are Mr. Long Yang Long. I was really thanks to you for saving my father before. I heard them say that your medical skills are amazing at a young age. Now when I see you, you are a handsome guy. This is a gift I gave you. It is a thank you for your life-saving grace to my father. I hope you will accept it. Mayor Su nodded at the secretary behind him. The secretary hurried forward and handed a bunch of gift boxes to Jiang Qingfeng. However, he found that Jiang Qingfeng didn't take it, but was stunned. What medical technique? What saved his father? And what does he call himself? Long Yang. At this moment, not only Jiang Qingfeng was stunned, but everyone in the hall was stunned. The scene was suddenly embarrassing. Su Shay, you have admitted the wrong person. He is not Mr. Long. Who is Mr. Long? Shen Tu hurried forward and said, pointing to Long Yang on the other side. Long Yang had to leave, but because of the arrival of Sazu City, he stayed and took a look. He didn't understand why Su Shi was looking for himself, but when he saw Shen Tu, he understood. It seems that the father in the mouth of Su Shi should be the old Su who he rescued not long ago. What? When Sazu heard Shen Tu's words, the corners of his mouth twitched. The feelings I have been brewing for so long have been used in the wrong place. Su Shi wanted to withdraw his hand without leaving a trace, but found that he couldn't get it out at all. Jiang Qingfeng was in a daze. so he held his hand tightly. Ahem. Sushi looked embarrassed and gave a dry cough. Jiang Qingfeng reacted and hurriedly withdrew his hand. Sushi, my name is Jiang Qingfeng, and Jiang Yuan is my father. Jiang Qingfeng hurriedly introduced himself, as if worried about his lack of reputation. He even said his father's name. Sushi was taken aback for a while, thinking for a long time seemed to have some impression, so he nodded, and then walked towards Long Chen without saying a word. But not everyone is qualified to let him speak. Chapter 427, Shocking everyone. Jiang Qingfeng was stunned on the spot, feeling very embarrassed. He talked to people facelessly, but they ignored him. Jiang Qingfeng suddenly felt the eyes of people around him looking at him full of mockery. In fact, those people didn't look at him. They were still in shock at this time. What Sushi was looking for would be Long Yang, the trash son of the Xiao family. Did they all read Long Yang wrong? He is actually not a waste. And what background does he even have? Suzhou City bypassed Jiang Qingfeng, walked in front of Long Yang, and stretched out a hand. Mr. Long, sorry, I just admitted the wrong person. Sushi smiled apologetically, then glared at Jiang Qingfeng. He secretly scolded this guy for coming to find himself for nothing, so that he admitted the wrong person. Jiang Qingfeng was so scared that he was stunned by Sushi. He finished his heart, and he was hated by Sushiji. It's okay. Long Chen shook his head and shook hands with Sushi. Mr. Long, the one you saved before was Sushi's father. He came here specially. Shintu stepped forward and said, but was interrupted by Long Yang before he finished speaking. Needless to say, I just heard it all. Long Chen said, reminding Sushi of the embarrassing situation before. Quickly gestured to the secretary behind him with his eyes. The secretary hurriedly brought the gift box over and handed it to Long Chen. Long Chen didn't want to accept it, but when he saw that many of these gifts were expensive nutrients, he decided to accept it. He doesn't need it, but he can take it back to his mother and sister. After so many years of hardship, they must have never eaten such a delicious food. Seeing Long Chen accepted the gift, Sushi breathed a sigh of relief. Elder Su gave a death order to give him a gift to Long Chen, so he didn't dare to perfunctory. Otherwise, let the old man know, even if he is the mayor, it is estimated that he will not escape the abuse. Mr. Long, my father is already awake. He wants to see you, a lifesaver, with his own eyes. When will you have time? Sushi asked. The people around were even more shocked to see that Sushi's attitude towards Yi Qianxing was so good. In fact, Sushi didn't want to be like this, but before he came, the old man had instructed him several times to respect Long Yang. He could only do it. Well, you can now. Long Chen thought for a while and said, just later, I can also ride their car to their mother's shop. It's all right now? But isn't your grandfather's birthday party still over? Sushi is a little puzzled. The birthday banquet is not over yet, and he hasn't urged him. Why is it so urgent? Grandpa, he is no longer my grandfather. Just now, he kicked me out of the Xiao family. I have no connection with the Xiao family anymore, and they don't allow me to stand on the land of the Xiao family. Long Chen glanced at Elder Xiao who was sitting here, and said coldly. Sushi was stunned when he heard the words, but he was also a wise man. He had also read news about Long Yang before and knew that Long Yang had always been showing the image of a wasteful son-in-law, which was disliked by the Xiao family. It is estimated that this time, it made old man Xiao unhappy, so he was expelled directly. Regarding this, Sushi just smiled coldly and secretly scolded Mr. Xiao for having no eyes. A genius doctor of such a young age is treated like a waste. Isn't it what it means to have eyes and no beads? Oh, that's the case. Since Mr. Xiao doesn't allow Mr. Long to stay on the land of the Xiao family, then I won't bother to wait. Mr. Long, let's go, Sushi said in a weird tone. Chapter 428, I cannot do it. Mayor Su gave old man Xiao a weird look. At a young age, Long Chen had a medical skill that even the magical Dr. Bai was amazed by, and the future is boundless. This kind of talent can be his grandson-in-law. That is the blessing of the ancestors of the Xiao family. But I didn't expect this old man Xiao to have eyes and no beads. Not only didn't know how to be sure, but expelled him. Let's go. With that said, Sushi directly took his people and walked out the door. Elder Xiao in the main seat looked regretful, and in just a few minutes, he fell directly from great joy to great compassion. I thought I was on the thigh of Su City, but I didn't expect it to arouse people's unhappy next moment. In Jiangnan City, this three-land, Suzhou City is the sky. Even if Sushi did not target him, as long as Sushi showed dislike for the Xiao family, it is estimated that many families would give up commercial cooperation with the Xiao family. Sushi, listen to my explanation. Elder Xiao couldn't take into account the demeanor of the head of his family at this time, and hurried to stop Sushi. Shinta suddenly turned around, his eyes widened, and his fright made old man Xiao's legs soft and fell down. Humphrey. Shentu snorted coldly, turned and left. No one dared to keep up. Old man Xiao hammered his heart regretfully, but he didn't expect that Long Yang, the trash son-in-law he had always looked down upon, would actually know the big man with hands and eyes in sushi. Moreover, it seems that Su City respects him. If Sushi was unhappy with the Xiao family because of this, it would be a big trouble. Zihan, Long Yang is your husband, so you have to intercede, so that he must not speak ill of us in front of Sushi. Father Xiao suddenly remembered something, ran to Xiao Zihan and begged. Xiao Zihan was taken aback. This was the first time Grandpa spoke to her in this begging tone. Elder Xiao was very upset with their family before, but now that he is in trouble, he wants to beg her. Xiao Zihan sneered, full of coolness in his heart. This is a wealthy family, only talking about interests, not affection. Grandpa, have you forgotten? Just now, he has severed ties with me and has nothing to do with the Xiao family. But what you said yourself. Xiao Zihan's tone turned calm, not to mention that she just slapped Long Yang in the face. Anyway, you have been married with him for a few years. One day you married him and begged him hard. I believe that as long as he is not hard-hearted, he will definitely forgive you. Elder Xiao said bitterly. When the people around heard his words, they all looked contemptuous, but they didn't show it. It was you who drove people away, but it was Xiao Zihan who apologized. So shameless. Sorry, Grandpa, I can't do it. Xiao Zihan shook her head. She couldn't do this. Long Yang said before leaving, their grievances had been settled. Ask her to threaten Long Yang in the name of husband and wife. She can't do it, and she has no face to do it. Presumptuous. Are you going to rebel? I won't listen to what I said. Xiao Zihan refused so decisively, coupled with the fact that the things in Suzu City had upset him. Mr. Xiao was directly angry. When Xiaotan and Jiang Lan saw that the old man became angry, their expressions suddenly changed. Zihan, otherwise you just listen to what the old man said. Go and try it. I think Long Yang should have feelings for you, and we have also treated him not bad. Speaking of the back, Jiang Lan's tone became more and more vague. Chapter 429, Rashomon. Xiao Zihan sneered. Mom, you also know how bad we have treated him these years. Now that he has a backer, do you think he still cares about me? Jiang Lan opened his mouth, but he wanted to speak and stopped, unable to refute. HMPH, I don't care. Xiaotan, go and persuade your daughter yourself. If my Xiao family is hostile to the Soviet city because of Long Yang, you will get out of the Xiao family. Elder Xiao couldn't bear it. He slapped the table angrily and shouted. Xiao Zihan felt cold. Is this her grandfather, a grandfather who is related by blood? In Jiangnan First People's Hospital, a car parked in front of the hospital. Su She, Long Chen and others got off the car, and the group walked into the hospital. Su Shi personally took Long Chen to Elder Sus ward, but they didn't go long before they heard a noise not far away. What's the matter? This is the VIP ward area. How can there be noise? Su Shi frowned. If he usually doesn't pay too much attention to it, but Father Sus ward is here, and it would be no good to quarrel with Father Su to rest. I went to see. Shentu said, ran over, and came back soon. Su City. There is a group of people surrounding the ward in front of them, seeming to be arguing about the medical treatment, and those people are more or less murderous. It is probably a mess, Shentu said. Hearing the word murderous, Sushi was a little worried. Fear that it will affect Mr. Su. Hurry over, Sushi said, and rushed to the ward of Mr. Su. Soon they saw the ward where Shentu was talking about medical troubles. The outside of the ward was indeed crowded with people, one by one full of social atmosphere. These people directly blocked the passage, and it was difficult to think about the past. Go away. Shentu stepped forward and roared. Shentu is a real warrior, and such a roar directly shocked those people. Everyone looked at Shentu at the same time. Rashomon does business, keep idlers away. A person who looked like a small boss said coldly to Shentu. Rashomon? Hearing this name, Shentu frowned slightly. He had heard of this name. It was a large underground organization in Jiangnan City, and the master of Rashomon had a very high status in Jiangnan City. But Shentu was not afraid, no matter how powerful Rashomon was. It was an underground organization. And behind him is the mayor. Behind me is Mayor Su Heng. I don't want your Rashomon to be destroyed, so I quickly give way. Even if there are dozens of people in front of him, Shentu is not afraid. When the little boss heard the words Mayor Su Heng, his face changed slightly. His eyes turned around Shentu and looked towards Sushi. As the mayor of Su City, they have appeared on TV many times, and they can recognize it naturally. The little boss frowned, and the least dared of them to offend was the people of the government. So after thinking about it, the little boss still ordered his subordinates to make way. Shentu hummed coldly, opened the way before, and Sushi nodded towards Long Chen, and followed. "This is the hospital. I hope you don't make too much noise, otherwise I don't mind cleaning up the land of Jiangnan City." Halfway through, Sushi suddenly said to the little boss. A brilliant light appeared in the eyes of the little boss. He gave Su-Heng face and made way, but this did not mean that he was really a mouse meeting a cat facing Su-Heng. "You know, Rashomon is behind him." Su-City, don't be too lenient. This time it's my Rashomon's big deal. If you want to be nosy, it's not good for you. I heard that you are vying for promotion recently, right? The little boss sneered and said, "The Rashomon also has a very wide network of contacts, and it is not impossible to influence the promotion of Suzu City." Chapter 430, Girl with Strange Illness. What are you talking about? When Shintu heard the little boss' words, he was directly angry. One stepped forward, pinched the collar of the little Rashomon leader, and stared. Shintu is a warrior. Although the little boss knows a little bit of three-legged cat skills, he is incomparable with Shintu. Can't struggle at all. Bang! At this moment, the door of the ward suddenly collapsed. A middle-aged doctor wearing a white lab coat fell out. His head was full of blood. The people of Shintu and Rashomon were all startled, but before they could react, there was a sudden roar in the ward. This kind of sound made everyone present tremble. It was not a human voice at all. No, it was not a human voice at all. This roar sounded like a ghost from under Juiu. Even Shintu showed fear. Long Chen frowned, and in the feelings of Shintu and the others, the voice was just terrifying and permeating. But Long Chen knew that this roar hit the soul directly. He was busy looking into the ward, and saw that in the ward, several people were pulling a girl who looked 15 or 16 years old. The girl was disheveled at this time, and the oozing roar came from her mouth. Don't think she is just a girl, but she is so powerful that 3 or 4 strong men can't hold her back. Will you cure my daughter? If it is not cured, I will tear down your hospital. A roar suddenly sounded. It was from a middle-aged man in a suit wearing glasses. Although wearing a suit and glasses, the evil spirit he carries cannot be concealed. Long Chen could tell at a glance that at least no less than 100 people's blood had been stained on this person's hand. In front of this middle-aged man, there was an old man in his 60s, and Long Chen looked familiar. After thinking about it carefully, isn't it the Bear Mountain known as the White Magic Doctor? Lin Qianjin's illness is too strange. We assembled all the experts in the hospital, but they didn't see any problems. Bai Renshan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. It was not that he was scared by the middle-aged man, but that the girl's illness was too weird. He has practiced medicine for decades and has never heard of it. HMPH. I don't even care about the disease. What kind of genius doctor is worthy of? I'll give you another chance. If my daughter can't be cured, I will make your hospital a ruin. Luo Tingan did what I said. The middle-aged man was so angry that he pinched Bai Renshan's collar, raised one hand and almost fanned it down. Stop. At this moment, a sharp shout sounded. It's Su City. His stern shout really calmed Luo Tingan. Everyone's eyes are on Su Shai's body. When Luo Tingan saw the appearance of Su Shai, his brow furrowed, obviously recognizing him. Although Luo Tingan was the master of Rashomon, he didn't dare to be careless about Su City, the leader of Jiangnan City. I don't know how many people have been saved by the genius Dr. Bai in the past few years. How can you bear to hurt such a kind person who is so susceptible to the world? Su City glared at Luo Tingan. The Dr. Bai had a very high status in the hearts of the people in Jiangnan City. If he was beaten here, he, the leader of Jiangnan City, would still stand by with nothing, and he would probably be criticized. HMPH. Even my daughter's disease can't be cured. How can I be called a genius doctor? Luo Tingan said coldly. But he didn't realize that Bai Renshan's eyes were on Long Jin's body. There was no fear on his face, but rather excited. Chapter 431. I can cure her, Mr. Luo. Your daughter may be saved. The genius Dr. Bai said quickly. Luo Tingan's face changed drastically when he heard this, and he hurriedly released Bai Renshan. Do you have a way? Luo Tingan hurriedly asked. Luo Tingan cared very much about his daughter's safety. He doesn't even care about losing his demeanor as a master of the house. The old man can do nothing, but this senior is very likely to save Lin Qianjin. Bai Renshan pointed to Long Chen, and all eyes immediately focused on Long Chen. When they saw that Bai Renshan was only referring to a young man who didn't seem to be in his 20s, their faces were obviously suspicious. Luo Tingan's expression grew gloomy, thinking that he was fooled by Bai Renshan. Old stuff. You should never fool me with my daughter's illness. Luo Tingan's tone was gloomy, and Bai Renshan couldn't help but tremble. But he still said boldly, I didn't fool you. Although this senior is young, his medical skills are so high that even I am willing to bow down to the wind. If anyone can cure the sickness of the daughter, The old man thinks it may be him. Bai Renshan quickly explained. Hearing Bai Renshan's words, even calling Senior Long Chen, these people suddenly believed a little bit. They also knew that Bai Renshan would no longer make jokes about medical skills. But this is obviously only a young man, saying that his medical skills are higher than Bai Renshan. This ... how they can't believe it. After all, in the path of medicine, talent is second, and the most important thing is experience. Looking at the world, which genius doctor of the impetuous side has decades of medical experience? Little brother, Bai Renshan is telling the truth. Although Liu Tingen was dubious, he still didn't dare to care about his daughter's life. He would rather believe that there is something than nothing. So the tone of speech to Yi Qianxing was more respectful. After Long Chen pondered for a moment, he nodded. I can heal her. Seeing Long Chen nodded, Liu Tingen was immediately excited. In order to treat his daughter's illness, he has had trouble sleeping and eating for several days. If you can really cure my daughter, I can allow you to make a condition to me. Any condition, even if it is going through all fire and water, I will definitely do it, Liu Tingen said firmly. All the disciples of Rashomon were envious when they heard this. You must know that the favor of their masters is of infinite value. Long Chen didn't feel much about it. The reason why he agreed to treat the girl was not to get Rashomon's favor or to help Bai Renshan. It's because the girl didn't get the disease, but the evil. To be more blunt, it means that there was dirt in her body at this time. Mr. Long. Just as Long Chen was about to walk into the ward, Sushi suddenly stopped him. His brows were slightly frowned. Mr. Long, you'd better not interfere with Rashomon's affairs. They are all outsiders. That girl is the daughter Liu Tingen cares about most. In case you don't get cured, or something goes wrong with her, I'm afraid it will be in trouble. Sushi said worriedly. If something happened to Liu Tingen's daughter because of Long Chen, Liu Shengman's anger would be too much for Long Chen. Even if he comes forward at that time, I'm afraid it will not be easy. It's okay, Sushi, you just wait outside. He'll come out immediately. Long Chen broke away from Sushi's hand, nodded at him, and then walked towards the ward. Chapter 432, Absorb Black Gas. Liu Tingen gave Liu Tingen a stare at what Sushi wanted to say. Sushi, please don't be nosy. I respect you and don't want to conflict with you. Liu Tingen threatened and followed into the ward. He said to his hand before entering, without my permission, don't let anyone in and disturb you. Yes, a little leader of Rashomon shouted and blocked the door of the ward. Sushi, do you want me to break in? Shentu asked. With his strength, these little guys couldn't stop him. Sushi hesitated for a moment, but shook his head. Rashomon is too powerful to offend, and you said before that Long Yang has a high level of medical skills. Since he voluntarily entered, he should be sure. Let's wait outside. Sushi said. I'm afraid that there is no one in Jiangnan City who can make him the top leader. It can be seen that Suza City still attaches great importance to Long Chen. After entering the ward, Long Chen walked directly to the girl. The girl was struggling violently. Her mouth was roaring and her eyes were red. There was a black hair faintly radiating from the center of the eyebrows. Of course, no one else could see this black hair, only Long Chen could see it. The girl looked very thin, but her strength was amazing at this time, and the strong men were all sweating profusely. Let her go, Long Chen said. The brawny men were taken aback when they heard Long Chen's words. Let her go? They know very well how powerful the young lady is now, and several brothers have been severely injured by her. Now it is not easy to control. How can it be easily let go? Seeing a few people didn't listen to his own words, Long Chen looked at Liu Tingen. After the latter hesitated for a while, he said to the disciples of Rashomon, listen to him, let go. In fact, Liu Tingen didn't want these strong men to touch his daughter, but the girl was very dangerous at this time and had to stop it. The sect master had all spoken, and the strong men did not dare to be disobedient, so they could only let go. As soon as the hand was released, the girl immediately rushed towards Long Chen, opening her mouth and biting at Long Chen's neck suddenly. Be careful. The brawny men were surprised when they saw it, but there was no time to stop them. But just when they thought that Long Chen was going to be killed by the young lady, they saw Long Chen standing calmly in place. When the lady was only a few centimeters away from Long Chen finally moved. I saw him quickly make a move, and touched the girl's brow. The black hair surrounding the girl's eyebrows immediately followed Long Chen's fingers into his body. Yi Qianxing's eyes burst out with a burst of light. After absorbing the black energy, he felt that his soul had recovered a small part. Although this repair was negligible compared to his extremely traumatized soul, it also made Long Chen feel much better. This black energy was actually similar to the yin qi that Long Chen had absorbed in Antique before, and it could be used to restore his spirit. The black anger disappeared, and the girl's hideous expression suddenly converged. Her eyes closed with anger, and she fell straight back. Long Chen's hands were quick and quick. He hugged the girl's back directly, and then gently placed her on the hospital bed. The girl was still looking crazy just now, and she passed out the next moment, which shocked the brawny men, including Luo Tingun. If it hadn't been for seeing Long Chen with their own eyes, they just clicked on the girl's eyebrows. They even wondered if it was forcibly knocked out. In fact, they also tried to calm the girl with tranquilizers or anesthetics, but they all failed. Unexpectedly, the young man in front of her was just a little bit, and the girl fainted. It's a miracle. Chapter 433, Special Method. Little brother, is my daughter okay? Luo Tingun asked nervously. At this time, he was not a domineering Rashomon master, just a father worried about his daughter. Long Chen nodded, and then shook his head. It's okay for the time being, but the root cause has not been resolved. If the root cause is not resolved, your daughter will do it again, Long Chen said. At this time, there is another soul living in the girl's soul. See, let's call it Yinling for the time being. That Yinling resentment was very strong, so the girl's soul was completely suppressed and her body was out of control. Just now, Long Chen's finger injected his own divine power attack, knocking back the Yinling. But it's just repelling. If you want to really solve it, you have to kill the ghost. Ah, what should I do, little brother? Maybe you can completely cure my daughter. Luo Tingun immediately became nervous when he heard what Long Chen said, and asked quickly. I said that if I can cure her, I will definitely be able to. It's just that my treatment method is a bit special later, and no one else is allowed in the ward, including you. Long Chen looked at Luo Tingun and said, special method? No other people allowed, including yourself? Luo Tingun frowned when he heard Long Chen's words. He didn't fully believe in Long Chen, and he was worried about leaving this lone man and woman in the ward. Why can't someone? Luo Tingun asked. I said, because the method is special. But you can rest assured that it is not what you think. I will not do anything wrong with your daughter. Long Chen said. Of course he knew what Luo Tingun was thinking, but his Long Chen has been in the different world for thousands of years, and he has seen countless beauties. His wife, Dugalanayu, is like a fairy. Although this girl is also very good looking, she is too young after all. She is only 15 or 6 years old, and her face is slightly immature. No matter how shameless Long Chen is, it is impossible to do disgusting things to such a little girl. However, when Long Chen said so, Luo Tingun still didn't believe it very much. The girl is his favorite daughter. Even if Luo Tingun is willing to die for her, he would never allow his daughter to be hurt at all. Seeing Luo Tingun's still dubious appearance, Long Chen shrugged. Otherwise, just believe me, you all go out and wait, or I will leave now, and after one night, your daughter will continue to return to her previous state, and in 3 days, she will not be your daughter. After Long Chen finished speaking, he stopped talking, quietly waiting for Luo Tingun's decision. His last words were not exaggerated in the slightest, and in 3 days at most, that ghost would completely devour the girl's soul. I don't have much time. I don't want to waste it with you. Since you don't believe me, so be it. After waiting for a while, Luo Tingun still did not make up his mind. Long Chen shrugged, turning around as he said. Seeing Long Chen really wanted to leave, Luo Tingun finally couldn't help it. Wait. I believe you. Long Chen stopped. To tell the truth, if he did need the yin spirit in the girl to recover from the trauma of the soul, he would not waste so much. Then go out quickly, Long Chen said. Luo Tingun stared at Long Chen for a few times, and finally made up his mind. Call those little brothers to leave the ward door. Do you really rest assured that that kid and the young lady are alone in the room? A key member of Rashomon asked worriedly. The girl he grew up watching when he was a child, and he cared about girls not much less than Luo Tingun. Chapter 434, Girl's Soul. See, what if it's not like that? Even Bai Renshan has nothing to do with Yinying's illness. Only he can cure it. We can only choose to trust him. Luo Tingun gave a wry smile. He hadn't experienced this feeling of powerlessness for a long time. HMPH. I hope he can really save Yinying. Otherwise, if Yinying suffers the slightest harm because of him, I will definitely make him regret living in this world. The Rashomon backbone clenched his fists, exuding a sharp killing intent, and said coldly, in the ward, only Long Chen and the bed were left at this time. Long Chen sat down on the hospital bed and lifted the girl up to face him. Hey, I'm also trying to save you, so I have no choice. Looking at the immature face in front of him, Long Chen sighed. To save the girl, he needs to integrate his soul into the girl's soul. The communion between souls is more sensational than the physical communion. This feeling can only be unspeakable. But Long Chen is not a person who likes to hesitate. He narrowed his eyes, and pointed his fingers together at the center of the girl's brow. An invisible divine soul power appeared from Long Jin's body and poured into the girl's soul sea along his fingers. As soon as Long Jin's soul entered the girl's soul sea, he felt a chill coming. At the same time, a fierce scream came from my ear, as terrifying as 18 layers of hell. In the girl's soul sea, it was blooded at this time, full of cold air. Long Chen glanced around for a week, and finally stayed in one place. The layer figure. Long Chen walked over and found that this figure was a girl. He was lying quietly on the ground with his eyes closed. A wave of black air entangled the girl's body, which has eroded 2/3 of her soul. Yes, this figure is the soul of the girl. The whole body was entangled with black energy, and in a few days, it is estimated that he will be blackened. Okay. Suddenly, Long Chen felt a cool breeze coming from behind. The experienced Long Chen swiftly flashed to the left, and then blasted towards the place where he was standing with a punch. Bang! A powerful force struck. Long Chen took a few steps back. Looking up, I saw a strange thing covered in black air appeared a few meters away. Did you attack me from the outside world just now, kid? Doing it for death. A permeating voice, both male and female, came from the black air, but Long Chen's expression was indifferent. He was the lord of the universe before, so how could he be afraid of a ghost? If it were in its heyday, this yin spirit would only feel a trace of Long Chen's divine thoughts, and it would be frightened. It's a pity now that Long Chen's soul has been injured, and Liu Opinion has been bullied by dogs. I'm afraid you are the one who died, right? Long Chen sneered. Although his soul was wounded, the skinny camel was bigger than a horse. No matter how weak Long Chen's soul is at this time, it is also a soul, and the yin spirit in front of him is just the soul of a mortal with a greater grievance. How can it be compared with him? Your spirit power seems to be quite strong. If you swallow you, it should strengthen my spirit power a lot. Boy, for the sake of your free delivery, I will let you die a little easier. Yinling let out a gloomy sly laugh, then turned into an afterimage and dashed towards Long Chen. Swallow me? Long Chen dismissed a smile. This Yinling had the same purpose as him. Roll. Long Chen yelled violently and hit Yinling with a punch. Chapter 435. Devour the Yinling. The spiritual power eyes, however, unexpectedly, his fist seemed to be hitting cotton, without any touch. Directly penetrated the black air. Swallow you, Gigi. Yinling laughed terribly, and a powerful suction came. Long Chen suddenly felt as if he was about to be sucked in by black energy. As you wish. A sharp glow burst out of Long Chen's eyes, without any resistance. The entire body transformed by the power of the soul rushed directly into the black energy, seeming to have become a part of it. GGG. I will win after all. No, how is it possible? What's going on? Yinling was originally happy because he swallowed Long Chen's soul power, but then suddenly screamed, because he felt that his soul power was dissipating in a large amount. There was a strong suction in his body, swallowing him. I said it, you are the one who kills. Long Chen's voice came from the black energy. His soul power is so powerful that even if he stands there and lets it swallow it, it can't be swallowed. Therefore, Long Chen did not resist and was absorbed voluntarily, and then it was easy to break through Yinling's defense from the inside out. No, you better not swallow me, otherwise you will regret it. Yinling screamed, but still did not forget to threaten Long Chen. Long Chen ignored him and increased his strength to absorb. The black energy was originally as large as 50 square meters, but it was swallowed by Long Chen 2/3 in an instant. What? Following Yinling's unwilling scream, the last ray of black energy was swallowed by Long Chen. Cool. Long Chen couldn't help groaning. The soul power of this Yinling was stronger than he had imagined. After swallowing it, Long Chen's soul wounds were repaired a lot. Host, Long Chen. Level, none. Bloodline, none. Strength, 15.81 for normal adults. Speed, 17.61 for normal adults. Agility, 14.21 for normal adults. Defense, 18.11 for normal adults. Spirit, 105? (1) for normal adults. Skills, Master Knife, Cat Shadow Magic Step, Domination of the World, Devouring Blood Magic Skill, King Kong Domination Body, Poseidon 7 Types, Sword Intent, Destroying Thunder, Power Fusion Skill, Destroying God Fist, Phoenix God Fire. Ability, none. Experience value, 10 billion plus. Now Long Chen's spirit power has recovered to more than 100 points, which is considered to be a normal adult level in Pangu continent. You know, Pangu continent is different from the Earth. Pangu continent is in the end time era. People there must be cautious all the time. In order to survive, they must improve their physical qualities, including mental power. Therefore, even an ordinary person is much better than an earthly person. If you casually bring an ordinary person from Pangu continent to the earth, they are all masters of the world boxing champion level. The Yinling was swallowed by Long Chen, and the blood red in the girl's soul sea also began to dissipate. This was affected by the resentment, and when the resentment was gone, the soul sea naturally had to return to its original state. Long Chen walked towards the girl's soul body and was still lying on the ground. Her soul body was corroded by yin qi. Even if the Yinling was gone, the yin qi still remained in the girl's soul body. If the yin qi is not dissipated, the girl's soul will not wake up and will only become a vegetable. Sorry, all to save you. Long Chen took a deep breath, lifted the girl's soul, and even kissed her directly on the mouth. No way. The quickest and most effective way is to mouth to absorb the remaining yin qi in the girl's soul. Chapter 436. Love. The contact between two souls feels different from the contact between the body. Long Chen seemed to feel that he and the girl's soul blended together. Long Chen hurriedly shielded these thoughts and concentrated on absorbing the yin qi in the girl's soul, then quickly separated from her. But even in the first few seconds of contact, Long Chen looked at the girl and felt a little strange. After sighing again, Long Chen withdrew from the girl's consciousness. You can come in. Long Chen divine soul returned to his body, and then said toward the door. The door of the ward opened in an instant, and Luo Dingan and several key members of Luo Shengmen rushed in. Not only them, Bei Irenshan also ran in. My daughter is really good. As soon as Luo Dingan came in, he hurriedly looked at his daughter, and he was relieved when he found that her daughter's clothes were not taken off. Well, the symptoms have been removed, but you still need to rest for a while to wake up, Long Chen said, leaving. A backbone of Rashomon directly stopped Long Chen. You can't leave now. You must wait until the young lady is completely awake. Long Chen frowned, a little unhappy. But he didn't want to cause trouble, so he made progress and went to the girl, reached out and clicked on her. What are you doing? Want to take advantage? The backbone immediately became angry when he saw Long Chen bumping on the young lady. He must raise his fist and hit Long Chen. Stop. But as soon as his fist was raised, Luo Dingan stopped with an angry rebuke. The backbone of Rashomon looked suspiciously and found that the hospital bed was already awake. Father. Although the girl woke up, she was still a little unconscious, somewhat weak. However, when Luo Dingan heard the word Papa, tears suddenly flowed down. Over the years, he didn't know how much blood he shed, but he didn't even frown, because he always believes that men shed blood without tears. But at this time, the man shed tears because of his daughter's father. Dad, what's wrong with me? I feel like I have had a long nightmare. The girl touched her head, as if she wanted to remember what happened before. But thinking about the fragments of those things before, she got a headache. The yin spirit has cast a big shadow on the girl's psychology, so the girl's soul subconsciously hides that memory. Long Chen didn't plan to help her remember this. After all, there were some things that could be forgotten. It's okay. It's okay. There's Dad. Luo Dingan hugged the girl in a hug. This kind of lost and regained feeling, people who have never experienced it, can't experience it. Hey, I don't know who this brother is, but I feel a strong sense of familiarity. The girl suddenly moved her gaze to Long Chen, her big eyes filled with curiosity. Well, in addition to the color of curiosity, there is also a strange sentiment. But this feeling even the girl didn't realize it. Long Chen gave a wry smile. What he was worried about still happened. He is in contact with the girl's soul, and even he has a strange feeling for girls, let alone girls. At this time, the girl not only has a sense of familiarity with Long Chen, but if she touches a little, she will have feelings for Long Chen. This is the sequel of the soul fusion, for Long Chen. This is indeed the sequel. Chapter 437, Supreme Purple Gold Card. Luo Dingan was still immersed in the joy of his daughter's wake-up, and almost forgot Long Chen. He came back to his senses when he heard her daughter mention Long Chen. He stood up suddenly, and then actually knelt down towards Long Chen with a plop. Door. Sect Master. What are you doing? Luo Dingan's move shocked everyone in Rashomon. Their master, a man who did not kneel down, was now in front of them, kneeling down to a young man. Even Long Chen was a little shocked, but he didn't stop it. Several of the backbone of Rashomon wanted to lift Luo Dingan, but they were all blocked by the latter's eyes. In desperation, they could only kneel towards Long Chen with the master. This made Long Chen a little embarrassed. After all, this is a hospital, and there are so many people watching. It's okay to kneel by yourself. So many people kneel down at him. It's a bit embarrassing. Little brother, you saved my daughter's life, and you are my benefactor. From today onwards, my Luo Dingan's life is yours, my little brother. From now on, My little brother will go through the waters and fires without saying anything. Luo Dingan said loudly. His tone and feelings were very sincere. Long Chen could see that all he said was from his heart. It seems that the girl's status in his heart is indeed very high. No need to. Long Chen shook his head. He didn't need Luo Tinggan's gratitude to him at all. After all, he rescued the girl only for the evil spirit. Little brother, oh no. Benefactor, I'm all serious. Even if you want my life, I won't hesitate to give it to you. Luo Tinggan's tone was very excited, and even his name for Long Chen changed directly. A person like him, spitting on a nail, will never break his promise, and will repay his kindness. Looking at Luo Tinggan, Long Chen couldn't help being moved by his sincere emotion. He knew that if he still didn't accept his gratitude, he probably couldn't afford to kneel down. Well, you give me 100,000 yuan as medical expenses. How about it? Long Chen said after thinking about it. He remembered that his mother still owed a loan shark of 100,000 yuan, which would be repaid soon. 100,000? Luo Tinggan was taken aback for a moment, but he reacted quickly and quickly took out a bank card from his pocket. Here is 10 million. Benefactor, I hope you don't dislike it. With that, Luo Tinggan was about to stuff Long Chen. Long Chen frowned. He said that he wanted 100,000, then 100,000. I said, it only costs 100,000. Long Chen said in a deep voice. The backbone of the Furashaman looked at Long Chen weirdly, wondering if this guy is stupid. Don't want 10 million, but only 100,000. Seeing Long Chen so determined, Luo Tinggan was also stunned. He silently put away the bank card, and then looked at the little brother beside him. Get the money, 100,000 yuan. Huh? Oh, yes. The little brother was taken aback for a moment, then reacted and quickly took out 2 cards from his pocket. Here are 2 pieces of over 50,000. Can. Long Chen took the past directly, and it was enough for 100,000. The grievances are settled. I'm leaving. Long Chen said, turning around and leaving. Benefactor, wait. Luo Tinggan stopped him again. Long Chen was a little annoyed, but still turned around. Benefactor, this card is for you. Luo Tinggan handed a purpley gold card to Long Chen. He seemed to know that Long Chen was impatient. He quickly explained. Benefactor, please don't get me wrong. This is not a bank card, but a supreme purple gold card. As long as you hold this card, you can enjoy free services at any of my stores. Luo Tinggan said. Chapter 438, Will we meet again in the future? Rashomon is not just an underground organization, it also covers a wide variety of industries. It can be said to be all over Jiangnan City. For example, those large supermarkets, commercial plazas, etc. are all industries under Rashomon. With this supreme purple gold card, you can enjoy everything for free in all Rashomon's industries. Fine. Long Chen didn't want Luo Tinggan to waste his time anymore, so he simply accepted it. Anyway, if he didn't use this card, it wouldn't be considered a disadvantage. Now I can go? Long Chen said. Luo Tinggan hurriedly let his men make way. Just when Long Chen was about to go out, the girl's voice suddenly sounded. Big brother, can you tell me, what is your name? Long Chen turned around and found that the girl was looking at him, her eyes showing resentment. It seems that I don't want to leave by myself. Long Chen knew that the sentiment hidden deep in the girl's soul was growing rapidly. If he had contact with the girl again, the affection would be out of control. But looking at the girl's clean eyes, he still couldn't bear to refuse. Long Chen. Long Chen subconsciously said that he is still not used to calling himself Long Yang. When the little girl heard Long Chen's words, her mouth moved, and she said Long Chen's name again. Long Chen turned around and left, and the girl's voice sounded from behind again. My name is Luo Wen, everyone calls me Wenwen, brother Long Chen. Will we meet again in the future? Luo Wen asked nervously. In fact, she didn't know why she hoped that Long Chen would turn around and say goodbye. But she has always done things with her heart. Since she thought so in her heart, she said so. She has been doted by her father since she was a child, and she has created this character. As long as she thinks in her heart, she will speak out. Long Chen's footsteps stagnated, but a few seconds later he continued to walk outwards without looking back. The soul fusion not only has an impact on Luo Wen, even Long Chen himself, at this time, is a little too slow. Every time he looked at Luo Wen's innocent gaze, he would feel strange. So he subconsciously chose to escape. Seeing that Long Chen left without looking back, Luo Wen's eyes clearly showed loss. HMPH. This kid is too arrogant. It's his blessing for Wenwen to talk to him, so he dared to ignore Wenwen. Wenwen, do you want Uncle Hu to help you catch that kid? The backbone of Luo Shengmen, who had scolded Long Chen before, saw the loss in Luo Wen's eyes and was immediately angry. When did this girl who grew up watching him as a baby be so wronged? Okay, This young man named Long Chen is indeed qualified to treat us like this. Luo Tingan waved his hand to stop Uncle Tiger. He has always been grudges and grievances clear. Long Chen saved his daughter, and that is his benefactor. He definitely can't be rough with the benefactor. Besides, Long Chen was able to cure Luo Wen in just a few minutes for things that even the genius Dr. Bai Bai couldn't do. Such medical skills and such methods showed his extraordinary. Such an expert can only be a friend, not an enemy. How's it going? Seeing Long Chen coming out safely, Su Shi breathed a sigh of relief. Long Chen was appointed by the old man to see him. If Luo Tingan really did not let him out, Su Shi was considering whether to take him away by force. But in this way, Rashomon was completely offended. If it is not necessary, Su City does not want to offend Rashomon. After all, this kind of power is really involved too much. Even if he is the leader of Jiangnan City, he dare not easily offend him. Chapter 439, Only Friends, Not Enemies. Fortunately, Long Chen came out smoothly and safely. It's okay, let's go. Long Chen's face was light, and he said casually, as for what happened in the ward, he did not say. If Long Chen didn't talk, Su Shi didn't ask. But he is a wise man, guessing that Long Chen can come out safely, indicating that the patients in the ward are all right. Otherwise, Luo Tingan would definitely not let him out easily. Before, Su Shi had only heard Shintu say how strong Long Chen's medical skills were. Even the supernatural Dr. Bai was ashamed, but he had never seen it. So I didn't believe it more or less, but at this time, he believed it. Long Chen actually cured the patient who was helpless by the great Dr. Bai. And before, the genius Dr. Bai said in front of everyone that if there is any disease that Long Chen can't cure, then no one can cure it. In such an evaluation, so far, the genius Dr. Bai has only dealt with Long Chen alone. No wonder the old man made me respect him. It seems that the old man is insightful. Such an expert can only be a friend, not an enemy. Su Shi thought in his heart that his evaluation of Long Chen was exactly the same as Luo Tingan. After all, they are all big shots, not fools. An individual is indispensable for birth, old age, sickness and death. If you can befriend a genius doctor, it is equivalent to a few more lives. Soon, they arrived at Old Man Su's ward. As soon as he saw Long Chen, Old Man Su quickly sat up. Although he hadn't seen Long Chen, he recognized him at a glance. You are Long Yang. Thanks to you, the old man can live a few more years. The old man is hurt, so it's hard to get up and express my gratitude to you. I hope to forgive me, Elder Su said with a smile. At this time, Miss Su bowed to Long Chen. Mr. Long, my grandfather has injuries. Thank you for the inconvenience. I thank you for him. Well, you don't need to call me husband, just call me Long Yang. Long Chen said, he didn't like the word Mr., he was too old. Although he is indeed very old, he still doesn't like this title. Haha, you really shouldn't be called Mr., after all, you are still young. Elder Su nodded and said, by the way, I asked Su Hen to call you. In addition to wanting to meet your benefactor, I also want to thank you very much. Are you interested in being an official? The old man asked suddenly. Yi Qianxing was taken aback, but still shook his head. Well, I still think that if you are interested in being an official, I will ask Su Heng to arrange it for you, but it doesn't matter, you can give me money. Can you see if 1 million is enough? No need, I didn't save you for money, nor for being an official. Long Chen directly rejected the gratitude of Old Man Su. To be honest, he did not save Elder Su for profit. It was mainly because he discovered that Bai Iron Shan had lost attribute points, and then he wanted to get closer to pick it up. After picking it up, he acquired medical skills, and saving Old Man Su was just to test it. Then what are you doing? Is it really just because of the doctor's parents? That's it. Long Chen said casually. That must also be thankful, otherwise I will always remember. Father Su has lived for so long, and he has never seen anyone who dislikes profit. If there is, it can only be that the benefits are not large enough. If Long Chen didn't accept his thanks, Old Su would only think he had a bigger plan. Then you want a Jade Buddha. Long Chen thought for a while, and said, pointing to the Jade Buddha worn by Elder Su. Chapter 440, Problematic Jade Buddha. Jade Buddha. Elder Su and Su Hen were both stunned. Although the Jade Buddha worn by Mr. Su is quite expensive, it counts as much as 100,000. Long Chen didn't even want 1 million and be an official, but only one Jade Buddha, and it was the Jade Buddha worn by the old man. Does he have any quirks? If you like the Jade Buddha, I can take you to a jewelry store to choose it. This old Jade Buddha has been worn for several years. Although it is not worth much, it is not easy to give away. Su Hen frowned and said. Elder Su also nodded. He has worn this Jade Buddha for several years. He doesn't say he has feelings, but he is not willing to give it away. There is a problem with this Jade Buddha. Long Chen said suddenly. The reason why he said he wanted this Jade Buddha was not because of anything else, but simply because he saw yin in the Jade Buddha. Just like the antiques he had seen before. He had already seen through the full-level appraisal technique that this Jade Buddha was obtained from the ancient tomb, and it is very likely to be worn on the corpse. So there is a lot of yin in it. There is a problem. What is wrong with a Jade Buddha? Su Hen frowned and asked. He is very concerned about the safety of old man Su, so even if it is a word from Long Chen, he will be very concerned about it. Elder Su didn't believe it. After all, he had worn it for so many years and found no problems. This Jade Buddha carries a strong yin aura. If I read it correctly, it should have been brought out of the ancient tomb and worn on the body. Long Chen didn't conceal it, but directly told the facts. Yin Chi? Su Hen shook his head when he heard Long Chen's words. He was a public servant, and he had never believed these superstitious words. On the contrary, it was Elder Su, an older generation, who still believed in these gods and ghosts. So when I heard Long Chen said that there was Yin Chi in this Jade Buddha, I was a little panicked. Xiao Yang, do you still know Feng Shui? Father Su asked. Get it? Long Chen thought for a while and said, if he didn't understand it, I guess Grandpa Su would not believe it. Dad, how many times have I said that the superstition is not credible? Su Hen frowned and said, and at the same time he was somewhat self-doubt about Long Chen's previous evaluation. A superstitious person is not an expert. Don't believe it. Don't be afraid of it. Elder Su said solemnly. Su Hen also knew that the thinking of these older generations was like this, and they couldn't change. So I didn't persuade anymore. But if this Jade Buddha was really brought out from an ancient tomb, it really wouldn't work. Although Su Hen did not believe in superstitions such as yin and qi, there must be bacteria in the ancient tomb, which is not good for the elderly. Therefore, he did not stop Mr. Su from taking down the Jade Buddha. Xiaoyang, if there is a problem with this Jade Buddha, let it be destroyed. Elder Su said. It's okay, I have a way. Long Chen shook his head, then took the Jade Buddha, with a burst of light in his eyes. The power of the soul urged it to forcibly extract the yin qi hidden in the Jade Buddha, and then refine it. Among the Jade Buddha, there was a screaming sound. This voice hit the soul directly, and all the people in the ward could hear it. The old man Su was so scared that he was sweating, and even Su Heng, a person who has never been superstitious, couldn't help shaking a little at this time, because that scream was so real. His soul was trembling. Chapter 441, Eliminate Grievances. Su Hen did not believe in ghosts and gods before. Because he is a public servant, not only does he not believe, but he strongly resists these superstitions. But at this time, he began to doubt himself. Because this scream is too terrifying and permeating, it is definitely not a voice that can be heard in the world. Long Chen did not have the slightest influence. This is normal. This Jade Buddha was worn on the dead body of the ancient tomb before. The dead body may have died of grievances, so there was resentment after death. Jade Buddha took the initiative to absorb this resentment, so after Yi Qianxing absorbed and refined the yin qi, this resentment would naturally dissipate without the protection of yin qi. The scream was just the resentment and unwillingness to disappear like this. It's horrible. This thing is really evil. Elder Su couldn't help shaking while lying on the bed, obviously frightened. Especially when I thought of wearing this thing for so long, wouldn't I be accompanied by one every night? Elder Su did not dare to continue thinking about it, or he would be frightened to death. This is also normal. Didn't see Su Hen and Miss Su, and even Shen Tu, who was a warrior, was more or less affected. Okay, the dirty stuff has been cleaned up. This Jade Buddha is no problem. Long Chen said. He was going to hand the Jade Buddha to Old Man Su. But as soon as he saw the Jade Buddha, Old Man Su hurriedly shrank his body, showing fear on his face. Don't look at Mr. Su. Although he was in a high position, he was more or less domineering of a high-ranking person. But in the face of ghosts and gods, he was still in awe, even fear. No, Xiaoyang. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Elder Su said quickly. Are you sure you don't want it? This Jade Buddha has a special material and a long history. It is definitely not as little as 100,000 as you said before. Long Chen asked again. His appraisal technique has reached full level, and it can be seen that the quality of the jade used by this Jade Buddha is extraordinary, not even worse than Hessian jade. And it is a long time ago. It was in the Tang dynasty, and it is more than 1,000 years ago. If they were sold outside, they could sell for at least 18 million. It's okay. You can give it to you if you like. Elder Su still insisted. They have been officials from the Su family for generations, and there is no shortage of money at all, but he is very taboo about such dirty things. So I would rather not. In fact, this Jade Buddha is indeed worth tens of millions to others, but it is not to Elder Su. How much is it worth? You have to sell it. Both Elder Su and Su Hen are officials. How can they sell antiques? Isn't this just shooting yourself in the foot? So even if it is returned to him, it is at best to put it on again, or put it somewhere still. Okay, then I will accept it. Long Chen didn't care. Just after accepting this jade Buddha, he saved them from insisting on being grateful to themselves. To be honest, Long Chen didn't want to touch it. He saved Father Su, and the Su family was grateful to him, although it was normal. But in this way, the line of relationship between him and the Su family was also connected. He didn't want to have anything to do with these big families. This time he returned to Earth after all the hardships. He just wanted to spend time with his family. Of course, if possible, he also wants to try to cultivate. If he can cultivate to the previous level, or even exceed the previous level, he will return to Pangwu continent and take Longming and Dugaleniyu to live together. After all, Longming and the others are considered their own family. Chapter 442, Ruined Sanguine. Do ghosts and gods really exist in this world? Suddenly, Miss Su, who was silent on the side, suddenly asked. Long Chen was stunned, and Su Hen was also stunned. If her daughter asked such a question before the change, Su Hen would definitely scold her, then talk to her about science and Darwin's theory of evolution. But at this time Su Hen didn't, because he also wanted to know, are there really ghosts in this world? Not only Su Hen and Miss Su, but also Su and Shen, who also raised their ears to hear Long Chen's answer. Long Chen was stunned because, how does he know if there are any ghosts? Should have it. Long Chen said uncertainly. After all, in Pangwu continent, even in that universe, he had seen too many existences with magical means, including himself. He also possesses mysterious means and soul. In the hearts of human beings on the earth, those who have special and weird means are not ghosts and gods. I've said it a long time ago. There is some truth in the argument passed down by the ancestors. Even if you don't believe it, you have to be in awe. You still don't believe it one by one. Do you believe it now? Elder Su glanced at Su Hen and Miss Su and snorted. He had been arguing with Su Hen about this before, but he was always blocked by Su Hen's scientific arguments. This time the role can finally be changed. Oh, today's things really ruined my three views. Su Hen sighed, looking a little lonely. Elder Su laughed very happily. He was happy to see Su Hen like this, and all this was done because of Long Chen. So Grandpa Su looked at Long Chen even more admiringly. I thought that Long Chen was just extraordinary medical skills, but he didn't expect that he still knew Feng Shui. This is equivalent to that he can manage the things of the living and the things of the dead. And what a person must experience in his life is life and death. So Elder Su is more determined at this time to win Long Chen's heart. The best way to win people's hearts is of course to marry, but unfortunately, Long Chen already has a wife. When I thought of this, Old Man Su was full of emotion. Xiaoyang, if you are such a strange man who is proficient in medicine and knows how to understand Feng Shui, if you want to achieve a career, it should be very easy. Why would you think of becoming a daughter or son-in-law? Ahem, I'm not laughing at you, nor discriminating against the son-in-law, but the reputation is not so good after all. Old Man Su asked doubtfully. Long Chen gave a wry smile. It was not him who was the son-in-law at the door. As for the real Long Yang, he has no idea why he wants to be the son-in-law. Without waiting for Long Chen to find a reason, Su Hen said suddenly, Father, Long Yang is no longer a daughter or son-in-law. Just before he came, he had just been kicked out of the house by the Xiao family. Evicted from the Xiao family? When Su Hen's words came out, the expressions of Old Su and Miss Su changed. It's just that the former is surprised and angry, but the latter has a complicated and weird look. It seems to be excited and joyful, but trying to hold it back. That old thing in the Xiao family really has no eyes, no brains, and even a talent like Xiao Yang is expelled from the house. No wonder the Xiao family is getting worse and worse now. It is strange that the old thing is in charge and not backward. Xiao Yang, do you want me to give you this nasty anger to ensure that the Xiao family will not be able to hang around in Jiangnan City? Elder Su said angrily, making injustices for Long Chen. The Xiao family is only a second-rate family in Jiangnan City. If he wants to, he can bankrupt the Xiao family overnight. Get out of Jiangnan City. Chapter 443, Yu Tong no, I'm not angry, and the Xiao family doesn't deserve to make me angry. Long Chen shook his head and said, if Elder Su helped him destroy the Xiao family, one would make him owe the Su family a favor, and the other would make Long Chen add to his sins. How could he do something that hurts others and disadvantages himself? Long Chen refused, and Elder Su had no choice but to give up the idea of destroying the Xiao family. But soon his eyes rolled and he was happy. Since Long Chen is no longer married, wouldn't their Su family have a chance? He was very confident in the appearance of his granddaughter, and he was definitely not much worse than that of the Xiao family. At most, they are still young, and some areas are not fully developed. When he was an adult, he was definitely better than Xiao Zihan. Ha ha ha, indeed, the Xiao family is not worthy to make you angry, but since you have divorced that girl from the Xiao family, do you plan to marry another one? What do you think of my Yutong? Father Su suddenly asked. It's just that when he asked these words, the faces of several people changed. Su Yutong's face was blushing, but the joy in his eyes couldn't hide. Obviously, she still has a good impression of Long Chen. Girls, as long as they are not particularly ugly, but also particularly talented men will have a good impression. Su Hen frowned. He was not dissatisfied with Long Chen, but Su Yutong was still young after all, so it's not good to talk about marriage now. Master Su, I'm sorry, Miss Su is fine, but I haven't thought of falling in love yet. Long Chen tactfully refused, but he saw Su Yutong's gaze showing his liking for himself. It's just that he already has Dugalanayu. Although he has changed his body and even the world, he still can't let go of the bitterness in his heart. I can only sigh in my heart. The charm is too big, there is no way, even if I change a body, it is still difficult to conceal my charm. That's it, then all right. Father Su was a little disappointed, but he did not give up. After all, Long Chen did not directly refuse, which means there is hope. You have to think of a way to get them in touch. Su Heng breathed a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that Long Chen said he had an idea for Su Yutong, so his father would definitely promote the two together. Especially he also saw the joy in Su Yutong's eyes, and knew that Su Yutong also had a good impression of Long Chen. In this way, he had no reason to stop. After all, in this era, it is not impossible to fall in love at the age of 15 or 6. It's not even a puppy love anymore. Old Su, if there is nothing else, I will leave first. Long Chen checked the time and had been here for almost an hour. Time to go home and have a look. It's okay, it's okay. Yes, do you want to send someone to take you back? Elder Su said hurriedly. In fact, the latter sentence was just a courtesy, and he thought Long Chen would definitely refuse. However, Long Chen agreed very decisively. One of the reasons why he was willing to come to see old Su was because he wanted to ride the car. Yutong, go and see Xiaoyang. Father Su suddenly thought of something and raised his eyebrows at Su Yutong and said, Huh? Oh, yes, Grandpa. Su Yutong was taken aback for a moment, and then he understood Father Su's suggestion. Quickly nodded in agreement. Love, you still have to grasp it yourself. Chapter 444, Song Poetic. Mr. Long. I said, just call my name, don't call me Mr. Then I will call you Long Yang brother. Whatever. In the car, Long Chen sat in the co-pilot and closed his eyes, while Su Yutong tried his best to find the topic. Su Yutong has taken care of herself since she was a child, and she has a very beautiful appearance, which can be said to be at the level of a goddess. Over the years, there have been indispensable suitors, but for them Su Yutong didn't catch a cold, and didn't even want to pay attention to them. But facing Long Chen, she was so active. The most important thing is that Long Chen still looks impatient at this time. If these suitors of Su Yutong saw this, they would probably spit out Long Chen with anger. Brother Long Yan, where are you going? Su Yutong asked, not lost because of Long Chen's attitude. On the contrary, he was even happy because Long Chen didn't mind being called Long Yang brother by her. This cordial name at least represented that their relationship was closer, doesn't it? Long's restaurant on the 12th Street in the north of the city. You can search on the map. Long Chen reported the location of the restaurant at home. Chengbai was originally an undeveloped area in Jiangnan City, a remote area. And rich daughters like Su Yutong must have never been to that kind of place, so they definitely don't recognize the way, and have to ask for an electronic map. Su Yutong finally understood the route after the first pass, and when she was about to drive, the window suddenly knocked. Su Yutong frowned when she saw the person outside through the window. You know? Long Chen asked casually without opening his eyes. That's it, Su Yutong said in a bad tone, obviously because of the bad impression of the person outside. If it's not convenient for you, I can go back by myself. Long Chen opened his eyes and said, he didn't want to waste time here. No, he'll take care of it right away, at most 1 minute. Su Yutong said hurriedly, then opened the window and looked at the young man outside the window with a gloomy expression. Su Yutong was very upset, and finally had a chance to get along with Long Chen alone. This unopened guy dared to bother. Hey, Yutong, it's really you. I thought I confessed to the wrong car. Why are you in the hospital? Are you sick? The young man outside looked excited when he saw Su Yutong, and hurriedly spoke. Song Shi, how could I be in the hospital? Don't you know? Su Yutong said coldly, She felt that her grandfather had an accident, and perhaps she could not get rid of the Song family where Song poetry was located. Yutong, what you said, how could I know that you are in the hospital? I also came to visit my friend. I saw your car by accident. When Song Shi heard Su Yutong's questioning, his eyes dodged a little. It's just that this flustered look was fleeting, and even Su Yutong didn't notice it, but it was caught by Long Chen. But he didn't say it, still closed his eyes and thought. He didn't want to touch these things. HMPH, do you know it in your own mind, but I don't want to talk about it with you now. I have something to go. Don't get in the way, Su Yutong said coldly, before Song Shi could speak. He directly pressed the button to close the window. Song Shi was still beating on the window. Su Yutong ignored it and stepped on the accelerator. Frightened Song Shi hurried back. He didn't expect Su Yutong to be so decisive, and he was not afraid of bumping into him. Chapter 445. He will disappear soon, master. Are you okay? Beside Song Shi, a Scarface asked worriedly. Song Shi's face immediately became gloomy. That cheap embryo. If she is not from the Su family, Ben Shao still needs to pursue her like a dog. But after Dad is promoted, you still have to be crushed by me. TSK. Think about it, all excited. Song Shi licked her tongue, her eyes showing lewdness. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something, and there was a cruel look in his eyes. Is there a man in the co-pilot just now? Yes, the young master. He seems to be a young man in his 20s with a pretty face. He should not be from the Su family. Scarface thought for a while and said, fuck. This cheap embryo pretends to have a reserved look on the outside. It is still cheap. I don't want a talented person who is less than her. You can actually see someone so much older than her. What's the matter? Isn't she a young girl? Song Shi's face was extremely gloomy. He had a habit of cleanliness, and if Su Yutong was not a young man, then he would feel sick. It should still be. After all, Su Heng's family education is strict. Su Yutong is only 16 years old. Su Heng will definitely not allow her to do that kind of thing, and she might not even allow her to fall in love. They shouldn't be a couple. Scarface thought for a while and said. Hearing what he said, Song Shi also felt that the possibility was quite high, but still a gloomy face. Even so, I am very upset. Besides me, I will never allow anyone else to get in her car. Scar, do you understand? Song Shi's eyes showed a brutal killing intent. Scarface nodded his head. This is not the first time he helped Song Shi to do this kind of thing. He was used to it. Don't worry, master. He will disappear into this world soon. There was an evil curve at the corner of Scarface's mouth, but this expression looked hideous under the support of the scar on his face. Be careful, Su Yutong can't do anything. Don't worry, master. Don't you worry about my work. Scarface sneered, and then walked in the direction where Yi Qianxing and the others had left. In the car, Brother Longyan, I have nothing to do with Song Shi, and their Song family has a very bad relationship with my Su family, so I can't have anything to do with him. Seeing that Long Chen didn't say a word, but closed his eyes, Su Yutong thought he was angry, and quickly explained. Long Chen still closed his eyes, but said softly. In fact, he didn't care about the matter just now. What is the relationship between Su Yutong and that rich and young man named Song Shi? It has nothing to do with him. Seeing that Long Chen didn't want to talk, Su Yutong couldn't talk anymore. Otherwise, talking too much is annoying, but it will backfire. Crunch. When Long Chen was half asleep and cultivating his soul, the car suddenly stopped. Due to inertia, Long Chen directly slammed into the board in front. If it weren't for his current body strength 10 times stronger than that of ordinary people, it is estimated that such a collision could knock him out of a concussion. What happened? Long Chen looked at Su Yutong, but the latter was not injured, but with a look of fear in his eyes. He looked forward. Long Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Although he had no feelings for Su Yutong, the latter sent him back after all. If he was injured as a result, he also had a responsibility. Chapter 446, related to women. Long Chen looked out through the window, and saw a large truck appearing at the front, rear, left, and right. A large group of people with knives and clubs walked down from the truck, and it looked like there were 20 or 30 people. The leader was a ruthless man with a scar on his face. Long Chen's eyes focused on the scar face, and he could feel the suffocating aura from this guy. This guy definitely had human blood on his hands, and there were no less than 10. It may be against me, Long Yang. I will stop them later. You run quickly. Su Yutong said with a nervous expression that she could not have imagined that this group of people would dare to attack her in broad daylight. But even though he was very scared, Su Yutong didn't want to involve Long Chen. Long Chen didn't speak. His face was also very calm. He had just returned to Earth, and the original owner of this body was just an ordinary daughter or son-in-law, who could not offend anyone. So Long Chen felt that these thugs should be aimed at the Su family. Long Chen was hesitating. Should he intervene? If once shot, may have to fall into the enmity between the two big forces. But if he didn't do anything, he could not bear to see a girl like Su Yutong being dealt with by so many people. While thinking, the group of thugs gathered. Scarface held a large iron rod and pointed at the co-pilot's window. Not coming down yet. Do you want me to invite you myself? Scarface said coldly. Long Chen frowned. This guy seemed to be aimed at himself. You stay here and I get off. Long Chen said calmly to Su Yutong, and then he wanted to open the car door. No. Su Yutong hurriedly dissuaded her, but it was still too late. Long Chen opened the car door, got out of the car, face to face with Scarface. Su Yutong didn't hesitate, and hurriedly opened the car door and ran to Long Chen's side. It's me that you want to catch. It has nothing to do with him. Don't hurt the innocent. Su Yutong stood in front of Long Chen and said. Long Chen was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect this Nizai to be quite courageous. Miss Su, this time has nothing to do with you. It is him that we are going to deal with, but if you stop, your weapon does not have long eyes and accidentally injures you, it is not our business. Scarface looked at Su Yutong, the color of greed in his eyes flashed away. I have to say that Su Yutong is indeed very beautiful, even he almost couldn't help it for a moment. If it were not for the young master, he would never restrain his desires. To deal with him? Su Yutong was taken aback. This was a little bit beyond her expectation. And seeing the look of Scarface, it seems to know yourself. So Su Yutong knew that even reporting his identity would be useless. Why deal with me? Long Chen's expression was always calm. He asked towards Scarface. It stands to reason that it hasn't been long since he returned to Earth, and he should not offend people. At most, he offended the Xiao family, but with the patience of the Xiao family and knowing his relationship with the Su family, he would definitely not dare to do so. So he was very puzzled. Because you provoke someone you shouldn't provoke. Boy, before you die, I advise you, some women are something you can't afford. Scarface showed a cruel smile. Hearing the words of Scarface, Long Chen's mind turned. It is related to women, but there are not many women related to him. Xiao Zihan, or Su Yutong next to him? Suddenly, there was a flash of inspiration in Long Chen's mind, and he remembered the man named Song Shi just before leaving the hospital. He seems to be interested in Su Yutong. Chapter 447, Lian Jiazi, did Song Shi send you here? Long Chen asked immediately. When Scarface heard Long Chen's words, a trace of shock and panic flashed in his eyes. But then it was covered up. He didn't expect Long Chen to guess it with just a few words. But he couldn't admit it. After all, at least the Song family hadn't fallen out with the Su family. I don't know what song poetry is, kid. Don't guess. Go to hell. Go ask Claude Yan. Scarface snorted coldly. It doesn't matter. I don't need you to admit it, as long as I confirm it myself. Long Chen's eyes burst into a ruthless look. He had no special relationship with Su Yutong, but Song Shi wanted to send someone to kill him just because he was sitting in Su Yutong's car. This made Long Chen very upset. Although Long Chen didn't want to cause trouble, he wouldn't be able to be slaughtered if the trouble came to him. Pretend to be a god. Give me everything and kill him. Scarface was frightened by the killing intent revealed in Long Chen's eyes, but immediately became angry. He has only been scary over the years. When was he scared? Under the command of Scarface, 2 of the 20 beaters around came out, rubbing their fists and walked towards Long Chen. In their opinion, Long Chen is a weak little white face. 2 people are enough to destroy him. Don't come here, my dad is Mayor Su. If you dare to move him, I promise you will stay in prison forever. Su Yutong tried to stop those people. The 2 thugs looked at Scarface. They received the order not to hurt Su Yutong. Now Su Yutong wants to stop them. What should they do? Are you stupid? A few people will bring Miss Su down. Remember, don't move. Scarface said, and then a few people wearing gloves came over and took Su Yutong away. Su Yutong is just a girl. No matter how difficult it is to struggle, even if he punches and kicks those thugs, it is like tickling them. Boy, don't blame a few brothers, we too. The 2 thugs had grinning smiles, but before they could finish their words, 2 fists slammed into their faces. The huge force directly hit them with gold stars in their eyes, and their noses were shattered. They flew a few meters away with a thump, and then fell to the ground. Lian Jiazi, Scar's face changed slightly, and the 2 punches were just made by Long Chen. Its speed is so fast that even the Scarface can't be seen clearly, and being able to fly a person with 1 punch is definitely not small. Brother Long Yin. Su Yutong was shocked when she saw this scene, and even stopped struggling. She originally thought that Long Chen just knew medical skills and geomantic omen, but she didn't expect to have such a strong skill. Being able to fly an adult with a punch, she had only seen this strength in Uncle Tu. Uncle Tu. That was once a record of 1 enemy and 100. Those thugs who were about to drag her away were also shocked, and they stayed in the same place and did not continue to take Su Yutong away. I'm still a practicing family. It just so happens that my hand is itchy recently, and he hasn't moved his muscles for a long time, so let's practice with you. Scarface was shocked at first, then showed a strong fighting spirit. With Song Shi's side all these years, no one dared to provoke him, so that he has never had the opportunity to fight with people who understand Kung Fu. This is too boring for the Scarface who is used to life of licking blood on the edge of the knife. Therefore, after Long Chen showed his strength, Scarface was very excited. Chapter 448. One punch, take me a punch. A strong fighting spirit burst into Scarface's eyes, and he dropped the stick in his hand and slammed it towards Long Chen. The fist wind howled. Long Chen leaned slightly, avoiding the attack of Scarface. Call. Scarface was taken aback for a moment, but then he reacted and kicked out again. But it was also avoided by Long Chen. Call. 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 Scarface's complexion got worse and worse, but it wasn't because he couldn't beat Long Chen. It was because Long Chen had avoided every move of his. Every fist is empty. Scarface feels bored. However, he was also puzzled that Long Chen's speed was so fast that his attack speed could not keep up. It must have practiced light skills. Generally, such people are not strong in combat. Scarface thought in his heart. In fact, Long Chen did use light skills, Moing Magic Step, which was the skill Long Chen obtained from a Shadow Cat monster when he first crossed to Pangu continent. Able to speed up and agile. Speed and agility are not the same. Speed is more inclined to escape and pursue, and agility belongs to attack speed and reaction. Speaking of which, Long Chen has forgotten how long he has not used this skill, mainly because as his strength improves, he has many more powerful methods. The law of space can solve the problem of speed, so Moing's magic step is useless for Long Chen in the later stage. I didn't expect to use it again now. Long Chen's speed is already very fast now, plus the blessing of Moing's magic step. As long as he wants, Scarface don't want to touch him. Hey, can you stop hiding? Just fight Lao Tzu if you are a man. Scarface was so angry that he used a radical approach. Okay. Long Chen nodded, and really stopped and threw out his fists. Blasted with the fists of Scarface. Ta-ta-ta. A huge force poured into his body, and Long Chen took a few steps back before removing the force. But Scarface took a step back. This was the first time that Long Chen was defeated. However, Long Chen's expression did not change at all. From this fight, he could see that the power of this Scarface had reached about twice his own. Ha ha ha, cool, come again. Scarface laughed wildly, and attacked Long Chen again. He also saw the strength of Long Chen with the punch just now. Perhaps the speed was quite fast, but as he expected, he should have learned light skills, so in terms of combat power, it was only average. Come. Long Chen's eyes flashed, but this time he still did not choose to dodge. Dominates the world. The fifth highest. A full-level hero dominates the world, and can increase its power 6 times. What kind of concept is this? Long Chen's current strength is more than a dozen points, and it almost reaches nearly 100 under 6 times. Boom. When the two fists collided, Scarface was still disdainful, but it solidified in the next moment. Then his eyes widened, and the whole person flew out. What? Scarface flew more than 10 meters away, and rubbed a few meters on the ground before stopping. His entire right arm was twisted in a weird arc, which is probably useless. The screams of killing pigs yelled from Scarface's mouth, and the thugs around were sweating, as if they were lying on the ground at this time. This man is so strong. Someone swallowed and said in disbelief. Scarface was invincible in their hearts. They had seen Scarface face a dozen thugs holding clubs at the same time, and it took only 1 minute to solve them all. But such a strong character was killed by a punch in the hands of that young man. Chapter 449. He must be a warrior. What's the matter? What are you doing all in a daze? Watching the show? Give it all to Lao Tzu and kill him. Scarface resisted the pain and shouted at the group of men. Those thugs were shocked by the methods Long Chen showed, and they reacted when they heard the roar of Scarface. But let them deal with Long Chen, they still dare not. After all, even Scarface is not an opponent, let alone a few of them. Why? What Lao Tzu said is not good. Seeing that his subordinates didn't move when he heard what he said, Scarface's face was distorted because of pain, and it became more gloomy. Increased the volume and shouted angrily. The group of thugs glanced at each other, and finally decided to listen to Scarface's words. After all, dealing with Long Chen is just that they themselves suffer. If they dare to violate Scarface, their families will all be affected. Kill. So these thugs raised their weapons one after another and rushed towards Long Chen. Long Chen looked at the group of thugs indifferently, directly urging Mao Ying to make a phantom step. When the group of thugs rushed to Long Chen's original location, they were shocked to find that Long Chen had disappeared. "Are you looking for me?" At this moment, a sudden voice rang from behind a thug. He turned around subconsciously, and what he saw was an enlarged fist. Boom! The beater directly felt a huge force hit, and his body flew out uncontrollably. One eye became a pandu eye directly. "Kill him." All the thugs were frightened by Long Chen's strength. They could only shout, trying to cheer themselves up and conceal their fears. "Humphrey." Long Chen snorted coldly, not wanting to waste time on these scum. Cat Ying moved with a phantom step, and his whole body turned into an afterimage to pass through the group of thugs. Every time he passed by a thug, the thug fell directly to the ground, conscious, but unable to move. Long Chen is proficient in medical techniques and has a good understanding of acupuncture points on the human body. Just now, every move he hits on the acupuncture points of those people, abolishing their tendons, can't die, but since then, they are all a bunch of useless people. This is because Long Chen didn't want to cause trouble, otherwise he would kill him directly because of his habits on the Pangwu continent. Damn it, this guy must be a warrior. He obviously looks so thin and weak. How can he be so strong? Pain and fear coexisted on Scarface's face, staring at Long Chen. He can now be sure that Long Chen is definitely a martial artist, otherwise he can't do this. Scarface knows the martial artist, but he is not a martial artist. Perhaps in the eyes of ordinary people, he is very strong. But in front of the real warrior, he is an ant that can kill in seconds. In the secular world, there are not many warriors, let alone such a young warrior. Lao Tzu, is this the goddess of luck in a previous life? Is it going to be against me like this? Scarface's heart was tumbling now. With his understanding of the martial artist, it is not impossible to kill him. After all, few warriors would follow the rules of the secular world. In an instant, all the dozens of thugs fell to the ground, leaving only the two holding Su Yutong. "You guys, do you want to do it yourself, or let me do it myself?" Long Chen looked at the two thugs with an extremely calm tone, because he was sure that the other party did not dare to hurt Su Yutong. "You don't come over, or I will kill this girl." A thug tremblingly held a dagger in his hand and pressed it against Su Yutong's white neck. The other thug stared at this scene. He was really afraid that this guy would shook his hand and stroked Su Yutong's neck. Chapter 450. You do it. This is their only hostage right now, and if they were accidentally killed by a companion, it would be really embarrassing. You do it. Long Chen looked at the thug who put the knife on Su Yutong's neck and said calmly, "What?" This made the thugs startled. What did he say? "Let me do it. If you want to do it faster, I promise not to block it." Long Chen spread his hands and said. The thug was sweating profusely, and his hands trembled more severely. How dare he hurt Su Yutong? This is the daughter of the Su family, Mayor Su's most beloved daughter. If he dared to hurt Su Yutong, then not just him, but all his relatives would have to disappear into this world. Don't think that Su Shi is an official person, but if he really touches his inverse scales, he will still use shady means. Do it. Long Chen suddenly yelled, frightened that Thug's hand loosened, and the dagger unexpectedly dropped out and fell to the ground. "You club!" The comrade yelled angrily and hurriedly bent over to pick up the dagger. But as soon as he squatted down, he saw a foot kick on his face. The whole person flew out directly, fell to the ground and lost consciousness. "Ah, don't kill me! Don't kill me!" The former thug who hijacked Su Yutong was scared by Long Chen and squatted on the ground with his head in his hands. Trembling, Long Chen glanced at him, before he could see that this person did not show any killing intent at all. It is impossible to hurt Su Yutong at all. So Long Chen just tapped his hand on one of his acupuncture points and knocked him out. "Is it all right?" Long Chen asked casually. Just looking at him, this was just a casual question, but in Su Yutong's eyes, Long Chen showed great concern for her. "It's okay, I am not afraid of you," Su Yutong said quickly, then looked at Long Chen with admiration. "Brother Long Yan, you are really amazing. I didn't expect you to be so good. It is the best I have ever seen except Uncle Tu." Su Yutong looked at Long Chen's eyes with little stars shining, just like a little girl chasing stars. The corner of Long Chen's mouth twitched slightly. "I am not yet your Uncle Tu's opponent." Long Chen told the truth. He had seen Shen's skills, and he had completely reached the level of a Tier 1 evolutionary. This kind of strength is much stronger than Scarface. Even if he is now, he is not an opponent when he only uses Xangba Danxia and Moing Phantom Step. Of course, what he is talking about is only the present, because he can be sure that he will get stronger and stronger. Just when he was fighting Scarface and those thugs, he picked up a lot of attribute points, and his physical fitness improved a lot. With the system, he will only improve faster and faster. Although you are inferior to Uncle Tu in terms of skill, you still know medical skills and feng shui. These Uncle Tu are inferior to you. Su Yutong is still very optimistic about Long Chen. Once a girl likes a man, then in her heart, that man is the most perfect. For Su Yutong's admiration, although Long Chen also had a little vanity, he didn't feel much. After all, when he was in Pangwu continent, he was an admirer of countless girls and boys across the continent. You are a warrior? Can you tell me what realm you are? At this moment, the voice of Scarface suddenly sounded. He was still sitting on the ground, one hand twisted in a strange arcade, but the expression on Scarface's face was no longer as hideous as before. When the pain reaches the limit that the human body can bear, the central nervous system will try to avoid the transmission of pain.